Board here on January 5th to order pursuant to the Acts of 2020, Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023 as amended on March 28th of 2025. Governor Moore Healey signed into law an act extending pandemic-related authorizations related to public meetings, which allows for remote meeting options for public bodies through June 30th of 2027. So this meeting will be conducted by a remote participation by the board, and I will grant permission to Westwood Media Center to record the meeting. And I will then I will grant anybody else wishing to record, just wish you would identify yourselves first. So, all right, let's see here. So let's begin with the chair's update, and we're going to start with the annual opening of the John J. Cronin Public Service Award, as we are now accepting nominations. This award, named for the late John J. Cronin, who was the town treasurer for many, many years and gave selflessly of his time for the betterment of the community, both as an elected official and in a number of volunteer activities, both within and outside the community. The award is presented every year at our annual town meeting this year, which will be May 4th, and past recipients include Harry Skip Wells, Al Wizialko, Tom McCusker, Ned Richardson, Barb Delisle, Steve Rasky, Michael Crone, our own Patrick Ahern, James Gavin. If you'd like to nominate someone, there are forms available on the town website, or you can contact the Select Board's office at selectboard@townhall.westwood.ma.us to have a form sent to you. The nominations are due by March 9th, 2026, and then the nominating committee will review any submissions, as well as any past nominations that have not yet won the award. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and ask about that. Speaking of volunteers and community civic duty, we are always looking for residents to serve on any number of boards and committees. It's a great opportunity for you to get involved, to share your expertise, and to help shape the various decisions that impact our community. If you are available and would like to participate, no prior experience is required, just a willingness to serve. We have volunteer positions available for the following organizations: the Westwood Environmental Action Committee, the Conservation Commission, the Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee, the Recreation Commission, the Cemetery Commission, the Commission on Disability, the Historical Commission, the Housing Partnership and Fair Housing Committee, and the Westwood Cultural Council. And then next on the agenda, I'd like to, as part of my chair's update, address a few questions that have come to us either through prior public comments or through email with respect to our use of executive session. We do so as required by Mass General Law, and prior to going into it, we have to state our specific reasons for entering executive session, and we do and have on every occasion stated such, always citing the specific reason and the section of Mass General law that allows for such. That's also included on any of the agendas that are publicly posted prior to a meeting where we will be entering executive session. Another question that we get periodically is, why do we continue to meet via Zoom? As I read in the opening extended remote meeting provisions that the governor has allowed through June of 27. Part of the reason is it allows for greater community participation. As we can see, there are a large number of folks in attendance tonight. It also allows for folks who are used to this meeting method in the business community. It allows for a wider pool of citizens who can be willing to serve on the boards and committees. And as you can see from my prior statement, we have many positions open. So this helps make it possible and feasible for many folks. I know personally that it's benefited the three of us at different times, as each of us has had to navigate, business or difficult family obligations. And I recall recent in-person meetings have been very lightly attended or not at all. If memory serves, I think there was only one resident in attendance for the interviews of our next town administrator for the candidates. I believe the last in-person FinCom meeting we attended didn't have anyone there from the community. So we plan to continue the select board meetings to maintain that flexibility of access for this board, for our residents, and for the town staff as long as it is permissible. We'll meet in person to complete required business as needed to serve the public interest. So with that, I will turn it now over to Molly for the town administrator's update.
So I have a couple updates today. The first has to do with the East Street signal. So as I'm sure you recall, we ordered the mast arm back in May or June of this past year. We're in a new year. With an expected delivery of mid-December. It has arrived. Back in September, we had Giorgio here talking about the timeline for when that would be installed, with our understanding that it would be installed sometime around now in early January. Given the chilly weather we've been having and the near constant snow flow, the civil team and our DPW are recommending that this work wait until the weather turns in April. And so as the understanding was that it was going to be installed in January, it's now being pushed to April. I wanted to make sure that that plan was supported by the board before I got back to him. So that would be the first one. Is there any thoughts there?
Well,
I don't.
yeah,
Go ahead, Joe.
I'm certainly disappointed.
Mhm.
And actually, Molly, it was ordered March 11th and 24th, 660 days ago. And the chair of the select board stood up at the annual 2018 annual town meeting and stated that the signal would be changed. I'm beginning to think this is a little bit like, I'm beginning to think, let me make sure I do this right. I'm beginning to think there isn't a snowball's chance in Key West, Florida, of this traffic signal ever making it up as the select board ordered. This is 660 days. It's just, and we did it as a safety. We didn't order it, on a whim. We ordered it because of safety concerns. And I'm very disappointed, despite the promises that were made to you, that you shared with us, that we haven't been able to get this done. And I'm not convinced it'll ever get done.
I will say it is here. They have it in their possession. I totally feel your frustration on this. We were told very clearly when it would happen. At the same time, I really have to defer to what DPW says is the best course of action. And, you have my word that come March 1st, right when the crocuses start popping, I'll be reaching out to him to make sure that we get that schedule in place for early April.
I think that's great, but as I'm sure you recall that I broached this subject about Norwood putting their concrete stanchions up months in advance.
Yeah.
We discussed it. I brought it up at one of our meetings, and I believe you were told, and Nora was told, that they'd be steel stanchions and not to worry about it. So, reminds me of that phrase about more excuses than a Christmas turkey not to come to dinner. And I think that's why we're out here 660 days later with nothing to show for it. That's all I have to say, Rob. Thank you. Thank you.
Go ahead, Marion.
And let me just finish though. I did speak with Molly this afternoon. I told her, and I'll say it publicly, that I think Molly, you've done a great job. You and Tish, you don't let anything slip off your radar. You're exemplary employees, and I really appreciate you guys staying on top of this. So thank you so much.
Yeah,
Marion?
I agree with that, Joe. Thank you, Molly, and sorry that you need to be the bearer of bad news on this, at least frustrating news. Joe, this is going to get done. It is going to get done. Like Molly, I do defer to our staff in terms of when this work will be feasible. I wonder if there might be, Molly, some flexibility. I appreciate that the weather is very cold. It has been very snowy. Might we, to your point about March 1st and the crocus, might there be some flexibility, say, as of March 1st to sort of check in and see, okay, where are we with the weather?
Sure.
Are we in a thaw? Can we get this done? And not knowing what I don't know in terms of the time and conditions that are needed for this. But if there could perhaps be some flexibility if we have an early spring and the conditions are right to get this done, I think that would
I'm
be
happy to
helpful.
ask. I know a lot of the concern has to do with potential snow clearing operations, and so once the potential for snowstorms are gone, I think we can really push it a lot faster.
Thank you.
Do we have a sense, Molly, in terms of how long it'll take them to install once they begin?
I know I have that
I
buried in my
recommend
email.
Suggestion. I share
Yeah.
Joe's frustration, but
Yeah.
so what is the actual elapsed time to complete the installation? Because I wouldn't want to have it installed for, all the reasons that Todd had cited to you, and have it be a potential a problem later on. So
Mhm.
at this point, I'm glad that it's in their possession. I want to see it get done, and let's find out how long it takes, and if we
Yeah.
can move it up to March 1st, I like that idea.
I'm happy to find that for you.
Thank you.
All right. My other two updates are regarding schedule. So the board was originally scheduled to meet on Wednesday, January 21st. As we continue to work through the budget process, we're looking for a little bit of extra time and are proposing that we move the meeting to Monday, January 26th.
And, part of the reason for that, Joe, Marianne, is that Steph, correct me if I'm wrong, is when we will receive the cherry sheets with the preliminary state aid estimates from the governor's office. So I think given where we are in sort of budget steering, I think it would be really helpful to have a much better sense of that. So that was why this was being proposed.
It's fine with me. Thank you.
Joe, any issue?
No, do you need a motion for me, Rob, for that? Or can we just say we'll do the
I
26th?
think, I
You
think
can
we
just
can
do it. Yeah.
Yeah, we can just- Yep.
Yeah, I'm fine, Rob. Thanks.
Thank you.
Other potential that we're trying to move is there was a scheduled meeting on February 2nd that we're looking to move for reasons we'll get into later in the meeting. We've been coordinating with Westwood Media Center, and the ideal date to move that meeting is February 3rd. It needs to be in that right around the 3rd or the 4th, as the budget starts to project, and we have to get ready for the FinCom public hearing. So February 3rd is the proposed date for that meeting.
That's fine with me.
Same here, Rob.
Okay, that works for me as well.
And I had a conversation with Connor this afternoon, and he is also available, and that will be his first select board meeting.
Welcome to it.
And those are my updates today.
Thank you, Molly. Okay, next we're going to move to the public and press section of our meeting. And today is a meeting where we will have both public comment as part of our public meeting, and there's also a public hearing part of the participation. So we will have a 15-minute public comment period that will follow these two updates. During this time, you can participate in one of two ways. You can speak live by being unmuted. We would ask that you raise your hand in the Zoom function to be unmuted. We will recognize speakers, and Tish will then unmute you. You can also submit a written question or comment in the Zoom's Q&A function. In both cases, we ask that you identify yourself using your full name and address, and each speaker or question will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. We will not be responding to questions in this time, but we will listen to all comments and concerns shared by the public. And then when we get into the public hearing, we will follow a similar pattern, and we will deal with that at the time when we are opening the hearing. So I see a number of folks in with hands up already. So I will begin with Miss Lynn Vitti. If Tish, you could unmute Lynn. Welcome, Lynn.
Thank you. I'll keep this brief. Despite the rationale stated a few minutes ago by the chair, beyond the convenience of the select board itself, why is the board still conducting all meetings remotely? The time is long past for needing COVID-era social distancing. And when deploying Zoom, there are limitations for the public. The select board does not use the chat function, so public participants can make comments or leave questions to each other. Why not? The select board does not show the faces or names of those who are making public comments, nor of the number of public attendees at the meetings. Why not? Only the select board and town council, etc., see how many members of the public are actually here tonight. Why haven't in-person meetings with a hybrid function be deployed? Over 16 or 17 town commissions and boards meet in person now. A few of them also do hybrid. That would be an easy solution for convenience of all town employees and select board members. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I will recognize, let's see, there's a long list of folks here. So, I think I will go to Mr. Terry Connaughton as I see his hand.
I think he lowered his hand. Let me just see.
It's,
Hmm.
he's there.
Oh, there he is. Oh, I see him now. Okay.
Mr. Connaughton, if you could unmute yourself and welcome.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
You can.
Awesome. All right, great. So thank you everybody for allowing me to share tonight. And just a couple of things. I don't like to tell too many people this, but I'm a native New Yorker. Okay. And so when I moved up here to Westwood, when my wife, Carrie, when we moved up here, we just loved the town. We visited a couple of different towns, looked at some houses. We loved what we saw, in terms of the open space. I mean, we're 12 miles from Boston. It was an easy decision. We loved the house. Perfect. And then we started to make our way around. We used to go on plenty of walks. I used to see Joe Privatera down behind the Hanlon School, and we got to know the trail very well. Loved living behind, loved going to the trail and spent a lot of time behind it. And as a matter of fact, many times we ran into Ann Cadigan, who was originally part of the Westwood Land Trust Committee. She was wonderful. She was very passionate about preserving open space, and so we always used to love running into her. And so we love the town. We loved the trails. Then we had kids. We put our kids into school, and that's when I started to really meet a lot of the parents around, and put them into sports, put them into met families. And then a couple of years later, because I knew the ball was round, they made me president of Westwood Youth Soccer. Okay, and so that's where I got to meet an awful lot of families. And I fell in love with the house. I fell in love with the open space. I fell in love with the people of the town, the quality of people in the town. But I have to, and I've always said I'm the biggest supporter of the town of Westwood, but that has changed for me recently. And it's changed for me because of this, what I find to be a very misleading and divisive tone of the Westwood, the Land Trust campaign. I just feel like it's been very divisive. It feels to me like the purpose and mission of the Westwood Land Trust has changed from where it was at the start. It used to feel very genuine and very well intentioned, but over the last couple of years, it just hasn't felt the same, like the same organization. And they've begun this marketing campaign against the bean farm that is like it's a marketing campaign like a Fortune 500 company. And so and I think it's it's asking the wrong questions, or they're saying, why is the town
10 seconds, 15 seconds, if you could. Thank you.
Why is the town wasting money on a lawsuit when the real question should be, why isn't the Westwood Land Trust honoring what the terms of the conservation restriction and the way it reads? I think we need to flip the script on that, and we should be asking them that question. And so that's all I have to say.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Thank you, sir.
Could you ask Mr. Connaughton to give us he gave us his name, his address for the
Thank you.
record?
Yep.
Yeah, 730 Gay Street.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next up, I will turn to Matt Urkel, who I believe is a member of our Westwood Environmental Action Committee.
Hi, thanks, Rob. My name is Matt Eckerly, and I currently as chair for Westwood Environmental Action Committee. I'd like to read a letter that we sent to the select board on December 13th. And the letter can be found on our Facebook page, Westwood Environment. Was also in the Westwood Minute and the Christmas edition of Hometown Weekly. Dear Westwood Town Select Board members, on behalf of WEAC, we are writing in regard to the lawsuit brought by the town upon the Westwood Land Trust, a not-for-profit, volunteer-run organization made up of town residents to protect open space. On WEAC, we serve as an advisory committee to the Select Board and make recommendations on sustainable environmental actions and policies for consideration by the board. More than 20 years ago, the town accepted a conservation restriction for 665 Clapboard Tree Street, stewarded by the Westwood Land Trust, ensuring that this land would remain preserved for wildlife and future generations. This property was donated by the McFarland family for the explicit purpose of conservation. Under the conservation restriction, the land belongs to all Westwood residents. When the town began inquiring about using this property for agricultural purposes for the bean farm, the McFarlands offered to buy the land back from the town in order to keep the land in its natural state and prevent conflict between the town and the Westwood Land Trust. The town, however, declined the McFarlands' offer and decided to pursue a lawsuit against the Westwood Land Trust instead. It is the Select Board's responsibility to make decisions that benefit all residents of Westwood. Conservation of Westwood's natural ecosystems and wetlands are critical to the well-being of the town's air quality, soil health, wildlife, outdoor recreation, and physical beauty, characteristics that are appreciated by all Westwood residents. Inflicting modern agricultural practices, including the use of pesticides, heavy machinery, and mechanical tilling, will destroy the fragile ecosystem and wetlands on this property, and is in no way in keeping with the original intent of the conservation restriction. To our knowledge, the bean farm has not provided any detailed plans that would suggest its agricultural practices will be of greater benefit to the existing ecosystem than the current conservation of that land, which is what would be required in order for the Westwood Land Trust to provide permission to use the land for agricultural purposes. The Select Board has not provided any clear justification for the lawsuit against the Westwood Land Trust. In addition, this lawsuit is being carried out using outside counsel at the expense of the taxpayers of Westwood. The town is wasting taxpayer dollars on the lawsuit and undermining the community's shared commitment to conservation. The meadow was donated to the town, and as such, it belongs to.
I'm going to give you a 10-second warning.
We, the undersigned members of the Westwood Environmental Action Committee, urge the town to drop the lawsuit and abide by its duty to uphold the conservation restriction on 665 Clapboard Street, preserving the land for current and future generations. Sincerely, Maria Constantini, Matt.
Thank you. You don't need to read all the names.
Okay,
Yeah.
sir. I would just add that this has been unanimously passed by WEAC.
Mr. Chairman, could you ask Mr. Eckerly, if I mispronounced it, I apologize. Give us his address.
And all future speakers,
Yes.
please come on with your address.
And one more point of order, if I may, sir.
Mhm.
Ms. Vitti typed in that she forgot to give her address, and I obviously didn't catch that one, but it's 37 Abbey Road.
Thank you very much, Town Council. Okay,
Yeah, my address is 19 Westland Ave.
thank you, Matt. Next up, I'm going to recognize Mr. Brian Kelly.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Ken.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. My name is Brian Kelly. I reside at 90 Church Street. I'd like to make a few quick points about the Prout Farm matter. First of all, I've been in town for a while now, and I'd like to say at the outset that, in my view, the Westwood Land Trust has done a lot of great things for the town. I think their land preservation efforts over the years have been terrific. It really has been a benefit to our town. So I just want that to be clear. That's my perspective. It's also my perspective, of course, that nobody is perfect. And certainly the Westwood Land Trust isn't perfect either. And in this instance, this Prout Farm matter, they are simply flat wrong, and they are being entirely unreasonable. People are losing track of the key point here. This is the town's land. And the citizens of Westwood should not have their land held hostage by a handful of volunteers who are being unreasonable and trying to block what everyone knows was at the outset a permitted use, that is farming or agricultural use on a small portion of the Prout Farm land. I hardly think growing tomatoes and carrots are going to destroy our ecosystem in Westwood. So I think I would like to commend the selectmen for doing the right thing here in trying to vindicate the town residents' rights over a small group of volunteers who are trying to block what should be permitted. And the selectmen are forced to seek a court ruling in this matter, in my view, and it's the Westwood Land Trust who is causing the incurring of these legal expenses. So to the extent people are concerned about the use of taxpayer money, the Westwood Land Trust's obstinance and unreasonableness is causing this. So I would hope, frankly, as a supporter of the Westwood Land Trust over the years, that they would drop their unreasonable opposition to the town using its own land for agricultural purposes. And so with that, I would like to thank you for your time on this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kelly. Next up, and I would like to remind everyone that we do have, with respect to a special town meeting, we have an agenda item that is a public hearing that will address this later on as well. I will recognize Claire Galkowski.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
We can. Welcome, Claire.
Claire Galkowski, 320 Dover Road. I just wanted to question what has the cost of the lawsuit been to the town so far, and where is it coming out of? Also, as we go into the fiscal 27 budget, is there going to be an appropriation made to continue pursuing this lawsuit, which may end up going for quite a while? I know that budgets, thanks to health insurance costs and pension liabilities, are very strained, and I question the utility of spending our money on a suit that will advance the business of a commercial farm for town, potentially, if they even win a bid, which I imagine is pretty likely if it comes to that. So that's my question and comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Next up, I will recognize John Cronin Jr.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can.
Good evening. John J. Cronin Jr., 651 Clapboard Tree Street, lifelong Westwood resident, 1985 Westwood High School graduate. On April 4th, 2001, the Westwood Preservation Society, formerly named the Clapboard Tree Preservation Society, conveyed 23 acres of the former Prout Farm, subject to the conservation restriction recorded on May 12, 2000 to the town of Westwood. Worth noting, the president of the Clapboard Tree Westwood Preservation Society from June 8, 1998 through 2005 was Charles S. Bean II. It's vitally important to point out that everyone involved, including the McFarlands, the town of Westwood, the Westwood Land Trust, and state of Massachusetts, were abundantly aware that agriculture was a permissible use. The conservation restriction was crystal clear on that subject. Additionally, the conservation restriction explicitly states that approval cannot be unreasonably withheld by the Westwood Land Trust. Without question, agricultural use was explicitly contemplated in the conservation restriction. After a widely thorough review and having multiple inputs from all parties signed the conservation document. The Westwood Land Trust reviewed the conservation restriction, approved the conservation restriction as written, and accepted the conservation restriction. It is wildly disingenuous for the Westwood Land Trust to now state that agricultural use was not contemplated. Plain and simply, farming is conservation. The Westwood Land Trust argument that farming is not conservation is factually incorrect and sadly a deranged and desperate attempt to unreasonably withhold approval. Additionally, there's no mention of a meadow in the conservation restriction. This meadow is a fictitious made-up term. Rather, it is a parcel of land that has been known for 100+ years as Moses Gay Farm or Prout Farm. Additionally, the incessant whining of the Westwood Land Trust supporters in regards to the current lawsuit is both sad and desperate. The Westwood Land Trust does not and has never owned the former Prout Farm. The town of Westwood owns the parcel in dispute. In 2024, as owner, both the Westwood Conservation Commission and the Westwood Select Board unanimously consented to the approved use of agriculture as explicitly stated in the conservation restriction. The battle today is in front of two courts, the legal court and the court of public opinion. As it relates to the legal court, all those who are associated with the Westwood Preservation Society, Westwood Land Trust, and the conservation restriction document will be subpoenaed and will be forced to testify under oath. The truth of agricultural use as intended, defined, and written in the conservation restriction will be revealed. As for the court of public opinion, the Westwood Land Trust and its supporters issued a challenge via the petition to call a special town meeting. Challenge accepted. Trust me, the supporters of the town's lawsuit and the Bean Farm will have a tidal wave of support. In conclusion, I applaud the town for absolutely doing what is in the best interest of the Westwood residents by pursuing a legal course defending town-owned land, which was conveyed to the town by Charles S. Bean II and the former Clapboard Tree Westwood Preservation Society. Conversely, it's crystal clear that the Westwood Land Trust, its supporters, and special interest groups in Westwood think they can once again bully the elected town officials and Westwood residents.
John,
No
10
longer.
10 seconds. Sorry.
No longer game on. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Crone. All right. There are a number of additional hands raised. I will recognize two more on the subject. And unless there is some other comment about other business, we have an entire section of the agenda dedicated to the special town meeting on this issue. So I will recognize Dan Bailey.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you, Chairman Gotti. I'm a little. It's difficult to respond to all of this, but the first question I want to ask of the many commenters is, have any of you read this conservation restriction? I am a real estate lawyer. I represent the town of Westwood. I represented many people who are commenting here tonight. Right now, I represent Duncan and Ellen McFarland, and I want to make that very clear to everybody. It's not as simple as Mr. Cronin suggests. It is a document that says that the Westwood Land Trust has the discretionary authority to determine what uses are consistent with the conservation purposes for which the conservation restriction was adopted. So this is why it is in litigation, because it is not that easy. There are competing considerations here. As someone who has done conservation restrictions for 30 years and is very involved in this. At a state level, I'm representing Hale on this. The lawyers on this call will all remember the law school lesson about the bundle of sticks and how just owning property doesn't mean that you can do anything you want with it. People have easements, people have conservation restrictions, people have lots of different interests. So I want to try and tamp down the rhetoric. It is not super clear. It is not obvious, and it is not at all appropriate to suggest that the land trust is out of line on this. That's incredibly divisive and horrible rhetoric coming from people in this town who I know and at one time respected. Start. I want to try and bring the temperature down here a little bit and continue to have some discussions about how best for the town to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. I'm going to address a couple of the comments in the Q&A, and then we're going to close public comment, and we'll pick this up when we get to the agenda item regarding the special town meeting. Angelica Evans, I don't believe you provided your address, so I'm going to have to skip over that. But as you can tell, we already have this on our agenda for later, and yes, we will be holding a meeting. Mr. William Sellis of 175 Canton Street says the Westwood Land Trust is doing what it's supposed to do, that is preserve natural land and as a precious town resource. Converting it to a natural meadow into a commercial farmland is not in line with that purpose. Thank you, Mr. Sellis. And then Leslie Graffinius of 51 Oriole Drive, I would like to ask why the town decided to initiate the litigation against the Westwood Land Trust and when the land trust was set up to adjudicate just this kind of issue. I think we'll address some of this all when we get to that particular agenda item. So with that, I'm going to call a close to public comment at this time and continue with our agenda.
Rob, do you want to get Mr. Bailey's address?
I'm sorry. Thank you, Joe.
I'm sorry, I missed that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Pat. Mr. Bailey, if you would just toss into the Q&A, please, your address, that would be helpful. If you are still on the call, he may have dropped after that. So, okay.
I will chase that down, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. So now we are moving to scheduled action. We have a change of manager for Anthony's Coal-Fired Pizza. I believe Nora is here to take us through this change in manager. So if you would, Nora, please take this away.
Yes, so this is an application we received for Anthony's Coal-Fired Pizza at University Station. The application comes from Florida Coal-Fired Pizza LLC, and they are requesting a change of manager. The new manager is Avery Lyons. Avery resides in Wellesley. He has been in the food industry for quite a while. He originally began working at Dunkin' Donuts in 2015 and worked his way up to assistant manager there before joining Anthony's Coal-Fired Pizza in 2018. Again, working his way up through the chain, and has been a manager at Anthony's since 2024. His query results are positive. The Alcohol Review Committee has reviewed this request and recommends unanimously that the board approve the change in manager to allow Avery to continue as the official manager of Anthony's Coal-Fired Pizza.
Questions from either of my colleagues?
None.
None.
All right, I would entertain a motion.
I'd be happy to. I'd like to make the motion, Select Board grant the approval to Avery Lyons being named Manager of Records at Anthony's Coal-Fired Pizza pending Alcohol Beverages Control Commission, ABCC approval, and to add the electronic signatures of the Select Board to the Alcohol Beverages Control Commission Licensing Authority Certification Form. Rob, did you entertain any questions from the public on this? Was there any?
This is not a
Okay.
hearing. This is just a public meeting item.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
That's my motion. I'm sticking to it.
I second that.
All right, roll call vote. Joe?
Aye.
Marianne?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Okay, next up, we do have a public hearing on the application for a Class 1 automobile dealer license. Nora, why don't you take us through this one as well? And before
Sure.
we,
Can
before
I
we,
open that hearing, Rob?
please do, Joe.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion, Select Board, open the public hearing for dealer Class 1 agent or seller's license, Peter Catanese, doing business as Central Motors, 62 Everett Street.
I second that.
All right, roll call. Joe?
Aye.
Marianne?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The hearing is open. Now you can take it away, Nora.
So this is an application we received from Central Motors, specifically from Peter Catanese, doing business as Central Motors. They have purchased the property that used to be Progressive Insurance at 62 Everett Street. And they've been before the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Planning Board. They have all their approvals in place to convert that property into a motor vehicle sales facility. And this is the last step in the procedure that they need to apply to the Select Board for a license to sell new and used cars. They are proposing to operate a dealership at that location. They also own the Central Chrysler Jeep Dodge dealership in Norwood, just down the street. So if you go further down Everett Street and cross over Route 1, they own that property as well. The former Progressive property is 6,548 square feet and will have 9 service bays. All of the service on the vehicles that they propose to sell at this location will also be performed at this location. They have proposed to have 18 full-time staff members, and they're looking to keep 44 vehicles on the site for sale generally, as well as have 26 parking spaces available for service vehicles to come in, and then associated parking for their customers and their staff. Their hours are proposed to be Sunday from 11 to 4, Monday from 8:30 to 7 p.m., Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Saturday from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. They will also have set service hours, Sundays from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Thursday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., Friday from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Saturday from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. The special permits that were needed for motor vehicle sales and for signage were granted by the Zoning Board of Appeals, and an environmental impact design review approval was granted by the Planning Board. There is one other item that is outstanding that they're working on. They need a hazardous waste storage application with the health department, and they're in the process of filing that. So that is the last item, and that, along with this request for a Class 1 license, will allow them to get up and running as one of our newest Westwood businesses.
Thank you. I'd also like to recognize that we're joined by Alan Booley, who's the Property and Construction Manager for Central Motors. Welcome, Mr. Booley. Anything to add to what Nora has had to say?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, the only thing I would add was the 6,200 square feet is actually the size of the service shop that's existing. The total square foot of the existing building is a little over 20,000 square feet. The rest of the building will be offices and maybe some display and showroom for cars, etc.
Thank you, sir. Questions from either my colleagues before we open it to the public?
Not from me.
Joe?
Not at this time.
Okay. Okay. And now I will open this to public comment on this particular hearing item. If you would like to be recognized, please raise your hand. I see 3 hands raised. And remember, these comments are to be limited to this particular hearing item. So with that, I will recognize the first hand that I see, which is Erin Sibley. Ms. Sibley, if you would unmute yourself.
Thank you. My comments do not pertain to this matter.
Thank you very much. Next, I see a Kathy, but there is no last name. So Kathy, if we recognize you, I would need you to state your full name and your address, please. if you would unmute yourself. Kathy, if you would unmute yourself, if you have something that you'd like to say regarding this matter. All right. She seems to be having technical difficulty. We will move on. And there are no remaining hands raised. So with that, I would entertain a motion.
I have one question, Rob, and I'm happy to make that motion, but I have a question for Nora. Nora, there's a perennial stream that borders this parcel, and there are outstanding conditions. Have those been shared with the buyer of this property?
I have not personally shared those conditions. I believe that the order of conditions is on file, and so they would have received it when they purchased the property. It is on record.
And they get a copy, and the new property owners, is that throughout town? They always get a copy of the order of
When you
conditions?
purchase the property, anything that's on record at the registry for that property is available to you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if you'd like me to chime in on that.
By all means.
That stream is not on our property. We just border it. It's on the adjacent property. However, we do have an extensive order of conditions from when this property was built back in 2012. And our council and ourselves are aware of everything, and we've been in contact with all of the boards. So we're pretty comfortable with what's going on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Booley. Joe, does that satisfy?
Absolutely. I'd like to make a motion, Select Board grant automobile dealer Class 1 agent or seller's licenses to Peter Catanese, DBA, Central Motors, pending final inspections by Public Safety Department and issuance of a hazardous waste storage permit and the certificate of occupancy. Also for the electronic signatures of the Select Board to be affixed to the automobile dealer Class 1 license.
Joe, before you second that, Marianne, I do see that there is a question that came in as we were moving to the motion, and Mr. Booley was answering the question regarding the stream. Fran Fusco at 20 Pine Lane asks, was there a traffic impact study done? Nora, I guessing not, given that there was no real change of use, but I'm not 100% sure.
So the planning board waived the traffic study because it was a reuse of an existing commercial structure, and in place they requested a traffic notice from a traffic engineer to explain the new use as compared to the former use of the property. And they reviewed that and determined that the traffic would not be increased at the site.
Thank you very much. Marianne, I would entertain a second to Joe's motion.
Thank you. I second the motion.
All right, roll call vote. Joe?
Aye.
Marianne?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Thank you very much, Mr. Booley. Welcome to Westwood, and good luck.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You as well.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Please.
Make a motion, Select Board close the January 5th, 2026 public hearing for automobile dealer Class 1 agents or sellers license Peter Catanese, DBA, Central Motors, 62 Everett Street.
Second.
All right, roll call. Joe?
Aye.
Marianne?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The hearing is closed. Next, we'll be talking about the housing production plan that has been originally put before the planning board and is now before us. So I believe we have Amanda Wolf from our Housing Partnership Fair Housing Committee, as well as some of the committee members who will be joining. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you.
Welcome, Matt.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome, Phil.
Hello, everyone.
All right, Amanda, are we expecting anyone else?
Yeah, so I see Mike McCusker in the attendees, as well as Joan Courtney Murray, who I think is just in as Joan right now. And then checking to see if Lou is here.
I'm not seeing anything.
While we're waiting for them, why don't you get started? Because I know this is a fairly lengthy topic, so.
Yeah, so the housing partnership actually has to open their meeting because we have a quorum. So I'm gonna just quickly bounce it to Matt so he can open the meeting.
We don't have a quorum, Amanda.
Joan just
Oh, Joan just joined. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, so, and I see Mike as well. Thank you. So, welcome everyone to the January 5th meeting of the Housing Partnership Fair Housing Committee. First, I would like to just introduce my committee members and staff. So I'm joined here remotely by Phil Giordano, Michael McCusker, as well as Joan Murray, and is that everyone? Yeah, and then myself, Matthew Giordano, from the Department of Community and Economic Development. I have Amanda Wolf here, as well as Director Nora Lockney. So just want to mention that very briefly, and yeah, I'm going to turn it back over to Amanda.
I'm just going to also add that
we also have Joe Prevotera.
Yeah.
Oh my God, sorry. We have Joe is here as well.
Well as Molly serves as ex officio. Okay, that's everybody.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to get right into it so that we, because I know we're short on time. Okay. Please feel free to interject with questions as I go through it. I've kept this brief. You can see an extended version of the presentation if you watched the last planning board meeting, but I just wanted to hit the high points for tonight. So a housing production plan guides future development for housing, especially affordable housing, and it's made up of three components: a community needs assessment, community engagement component, and then lastly, developing goals and strategies based on those components. It sets goals to ensure we're serving community needs, promoting housing stability for current and future residents, and also continuing to exceed 10% on our SHI. The plans are updated every year by the Housing Partnership / Fair Housing Committee, and they ultimately get approved by the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. The town did its first plan in 2020, and so that expired after 5 years, and so now this is the update. This has been an 18-month process. We had 2 engagement events, we ran 2 surveys, and then we also held 10 public meetings over the course of that period. Just to hit the highlights from the comprehensive needs assessment, the first thing we looked at was population growth. While population increases have surpassed what the MAPC originally predicted for Westwood, the only prediction we have for moving forward is from the UMass Donahue Institute, or UMDI, and they're inherently flawed because they're based on historical birth, death, and migration trends. So they don't factor in things like a pandemic or zoning capacity or other things that would influence population. So we say take this number with a grain of salt because it's all we have in terms of predictors of future growth, but they are predicting about 25,000 people by 2050. But again, take that with a grain of salt. And also, I forgot to mention it on the last slide, but we also know Westwood is predominantly white and very few identify as Hispanic or Latino. Looking at age, we determined that the same is true as it was 5 years ago. Westwood has an aging population with a quarter of the population age 60 or older. And in fact, half of the households have someone 60 years or older in Westwood. And notably, 10.3% of households have someone who is 65 years or older. And the reason I point that out is because that means we're going to have a shift in the next coming years where we're going to have even more seniors than we did before. And then you'll note, conversely, the smallest group is the young professionals, 25 to 39. So there are about 5,600 housing units in Westwood. Most of those are single family. And the second largest density type are apartment buildings with 20 or more units. So a big conversation in housing right now across the US, not just in Massachusetts, is the missing middle. So those mid-density housing options like townhouses. So we are seeing a little bit of that in Westwood, where we're missing those mid options. And then you'll note that a significant part of our housing inventory is age restricted. So, you know, the last 10 years or so, only 2 of the affordable units that have been created have been age restricted. So the town has definitely shifted in its approach. But a lot of this is legacies of housing developments from the 70s. Looking at income and cost of living, so the median income continues to rise in Westwood. We're at almost $200,000 for the median income, and we're seeing the share of high income earners grow while the share of low and moderate income earners decrease. Interestingly, and I should note, we used 2022 data primarily because that was what was most available at the time when we drafted this section. We saw the biggest jump in poverty in at least 10 years. We don't know why yet, and it'll be interesting to see how that trend changes, especially with the pandemic. But just something to note, we did see an unusual jump in poverty. And then we're also seeing a lot of residents paying more than 30% of their income on housing, particularly renters, which is always the case. Renters always end up paying more of their income on housing than a homeowner. But also it's interesting that homeowners without a mortgage are cost burdened. So that means taxes, utilities, other housing expenses. People are paying a significant portion of their income on housing. I'm not going to go through all of this because obviously you're familiar with this as the select board, but we would be remiss to not consider taxes in this discussion. So looking at fiscal year 24, the levy increase was 8%, which included the override from Pine Hill. But the average residential tax bill increased 12% because of the increase in property values. And that was even after the select board shifted the tax base. And so what we're seeing is a dramatic rise in property values, which then has impact on people's taxes, and then that contributes to the cost burden people are experiencing. Going into the community engagement that we did, so we ran 2 surveys. We first did a resident survey and we had just over 200 responses on that. And most of the reported hardship was related to cost, looking at rent or your mortgage, taxes, and maintenance and repair. Interestingly, no one reported utilities as a hardship. So that was an interesting indicator. They also reported feeling like the village-like character of Westwood is something they really appreciate. And also the town services, even though it's not directly related to housing. I was surprised by how many people pointed out how great the library and the senior center and the different services that the town has to offer are something they really appreciate about Westwood, and that it makes it ideal for all stages of life. Then we did a developer and property manager survey. Unfortunately, we only got 2 responses on this. Granted, it was a small pool of people to begin with. So it's not necessarily representative, but there were some interesting responses. They appreciate the attention to detail and communication throughout the permitting process, no matter what board it is. They talked about the need for more public education on housing need. So they feel the pushback when they're trying to build a project, and also when they're fielding applicants to live in their properties and the number of people they have to turn away or put on a wait list. So they asked for more public education on that. And then the only area of improvement they said was the length of the permitting process. Even that, they weren't totally dissatisfied with it, but it's an area of improvement. Then we held 2 events. So we first had an event at the Council on Aging to discuss housing for seniors and persons with disabilities. And the interesting takeaway from this was that people aren't aware of their options. So, you know, for example, this event was held prior to the ADU changes taking effect. And we had already allowed ADUs in Westwood, and many people in the room did not know that and were actually interested in that. So just more education on their options for housing other than just senior living or group home living, but looking at other creative solutions. Then we had a visioning session where people talked about wanting zoning changes to promote cluster and townhouse style living, a cultural shift from NIMBY to YIMBY. And they also talked about feeling pride in living in a community that has prioritized affordable housing. And then I didn't put a flyer on it, but we also had a display at the library throughout last fall with where people could fill out visioning cards and share their vision for housing, and people had similar responses to that we saw in the surveys to that too. So lastly, we turn this into goals and strategies. The first goal is foster a welcoming, socioeconomically diverse community. And this is based on the idea that we recognize Westwood has a finite amount of land, both to develop or to be redeveloped, and that we also have to balance that with the commercial needs. So how else can we help people? And so a big one that we talked about was compiling resources that are publicly accessible so that people can access those before they need it, rather than having to find that information from different people. So making it easier to know, how do I apply to a voucher? How do I apply to SNAP? All those things. Then we talked about establishing a citizen academy on housing related topics. This builds upon what Molly and Stephanie have been doing, some of their municipal 101 sessions. The Housing Partnership thought it would be interesting to do it on housing, both from a resource standpoint and helping people help themselves, but also from a cultural shift standpoint. So kind of demystifying some of the stigmas around housing. Then it was to formalize fair housing training, which we've already started doing. So this is just reaffirming our commitment that's in the 2020 comprehensive plan as well. So the planning board has been going through fair housing training over the last couple of years, and then we're slowly rolling it out to the other committees that interact with housing in various ways. And then in the event that Westwood opts not to update their housing production plan in the next 5-year iteration, we just said, let's do a brief assessment every 5 years. We don't have to do a new plan, but let's just check in on the data. And then every 10 years, do a more comprehensive review. Goal 2 was to diversify housing options. The first one is to explore the establishment of a 40Y starter home zoning district. This is new legislation that was enacted in 2022. We're still waiting on the final guidelines for this, but it's an optional thing that a municipality can opt into. And essentially it ensures that the homes built in that district stay starter homes. So there's limits on expansion and things like that. You also, the town gets a payment if they adopt it, and then an additional payment for each unit constructed within that. Next was to explore zoning measures that encourage cluster and townhouse style development, going directly from what came out of the visioning session. Then also preserving and increasing affordable homeownership opportunities to ensure long-term sustainability of the program. A lot of our units in the homeownership program are set to expire after 50 years, which will have significant impacts on our SHI when that starts happening, which should be around 2045, 2050. So just keeping that in the forefront of our mind, preserving those units where we can, which usually happens through resale. They get replaced with a deed rider that doesn't expire.
And man, I have questions for at the end, but this is one I wanted to just ask about, because I heard you mention this when I watched the planning board session as well. So what happens when those expire? Do they just roll off our sustainable housing inventory, and then are they then sold at market rate? What happens there?
Yeah, so once the 50-year mark hits from whenever the time of the closing was, so that varies on some of the properties, it's just not effective anymore. So the people can stay in the home and then pass it down to a family member, which they wouldn't be able to do otherwise, or if they decide to sell, it would sell for full market rate. It just automatically comes off of our SHI at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Expand, this is a component we're required to include under the Housing Production Plan guidelines. So expand affordable housing that serves households at or below 30%, 50%, and 80% AMI. This is building upon what the planning board already did this past May at town meeting, and just say, let's keep this on the forefront of our minds and see where else we can expand upon this. without impacting the economic feasibility of projects, because that has to be considered too. Then one of the components you have to have of a plan is identifying a publicly owned parcel for housing development. Right now in Westwood, we don't have an ideal town-owned properties for housing development. And the planning board had kind of started this discussion when they went through the Mumford redistricting, where they redistrict the MassDOT parcel on Route 1 as part of the Mumford district, even though it wasn't eligible for our Mumford requirements, because it's right near the train station and is perfectly ideal for the exact type of housing that the state is encouraging towns create. The other thing is it's underutilized, and the state is encouraging all of their agencies to review their properties and identify underutilized lots for housing development. So that's where this came from. It was our creative solution to recognizing we don't have many options here in Westwood to pick from. Next was increasing the SHI by at least 2%. That's just for safety, we are well above the 10% right now, but just again, planning ahead for when we may inevitably lose those properties starting in 2045. And then educate residents on less traditional housing options such as ADUs, aging in place, and co-living. All right, streamline and reduce barriers in the permitting process was goal number 3. So we looked at developing benchmarking to see where can we reduce permitting timelines, if there even is an opportunity to reduce permitting timelines. Implementing post-construction surveying of housing developers. Developing a housing policy guide, defining best practice. This is a goal that set out in the comprehensive plan. So this is just making everything consistent. We're just reiterating that goal. And then strengthening partnerships with supportive housing providers. There's a lot of interest in creating more options for veterans or people with disabilities, but not necessarily a lot of awareness in how they can do that. And that was one of the takeaways from the Senior Center event. And then lastly on this one, conduct a comprehensive review of the zoning bylaws. We thought this was the perfect project for to outsource to a grad program, have a group of students look at the zoning bylaw from a independent perspective and come up with recommendations that they think we should consider. And then lastly, expand or enhance funding sources for affordable housing. Westwood, it's really hard for us to get funding. We're not a rural community, we're not an urban community, and we don't have any environmental justice communities. So we don't qualify for a lot of grants. So the first is revisit exploration of adopting the Community Preservation Act. We know this was just recently looked into. And what we're essentially saying in this is keep it on our radar. We're not asking anyone to redo the work that's already been done. We recognize the why it was ultimately not considered. But this is something the state strongly pushes. So we're saying just have it on your radar. Next is establishing a municipal affordable housing trust. This is something that comes up often when people have trouble with home repairs or just anything comes up. The first question from the state is, do you have a housing trust? And we don't. So looking into the feasibility of that. Establishing a process for the donation of market rate properties to nonprofit housing providers. So occasionally we do get inquiries from people who are selling their home in Westwood and want it turned into affordable housing. And all we're saying is let's just have the information ready for what that process looks like. We especially had organizations like Baja in mind when we wrote this, because that's usually where we would try to direct this. And then pursue reobtaining the Housing Choice Community designation. This is a designation Westwood previously had. There's a list of criteria that changes annually, and the Housing Production Plan is one of those criteria. And once you have that designation, you have many more grants that you can access, and it can be used for things like sidewalks or infrastructure needs for the sake of housing development. Lastly, educating affordable housing property owners on financing options. So just letting them know some of the other programs out there and ways that they can make the housing more affordable, both to build and to rent out, that they may or may not be aware of already. And with that, I will open it back to you for questions. I encourage the housing partnership members to also participate in this discussion.
Thank you, Amanda, for the presentation and all the hard work that went into it. I will first turn to my colleagues to see if either of them have questions for you.
I just have a couple of comments, if I may, Rob. First of all, Amanda, thank you very much for that presentation and your work. And I want to thank the entire group, Matthew, Joan, Phil, Mike, Joe, our own Joe, and Lou Rizzoli, who I believe was also part of this, our affordable housing champion here in Westwood. Thank you all for this really thoughtful work, which is in complete accord with our comprehensive plan here in Westwood. Just a few comments, some things that really stood out to me as extremely interesting is the potential for the 40Y starter home zoning district. That's exciting. I hope we do get some guidance on that soon and that we really look into that. A number of residents, as you well know, over the years have been looking for that. The numbers that you showed us, the dearth of people in town ages 25 to 40 just show how hard it is to live in Westwood, to buy in Westwood. And, I wonder if those starter homes could also be used for seniors perhaps as well.
Actually, Mary Ann, if I could jump in.
Please.
I prepared a draft of a 40Y proposed article, which the planning board, we weren't able to get because we just had too much on our plate, but there's a draft that we're going to be considering hopefully in the future, but it's already in the queue and we're actively thinking about it.
That's very exciting. I think the highway facilities property is a very exciting potential to look into, as well as the housing choice community designation. I hope we can really focus on that. So thank you all very much for your work.
Joe, I know you were part of all this. Anything that you would like to add?
I concur with what Mary Ann just said, but I have to tell you that when time has permitted, I'd like to drop in on meetings to see how things are going. And this was a really fun group of people to work with. Mike did a great job. Matt took over as chair, did an excellent job. Phil's being very humble because at one of our meetings, someone brought up the fact about the starter homes. And within minutes, Phil had this 40Y information to share with the whole group. And I'm very excited about that. So this was a great group, very dedicated. And Amanda has the patience of Job. So they did a great job.
And Amanda was doing yeoman's work on this. Obviously, it shows, but I just want to make sure that I add my kudos to Amanda specifically.
I concur. That's it for me, Rob.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Phil. I do have a couple of questions to add. So, Amanda, if I understood correctly, this isn't something that is a requirement right now, but a best practice. Is that right?
The plan itself, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's up to the town whether they update the plan or not. It does automatically expire after 5 years. So our previous one has now officially expired. And the reason we did it was there's benefits to it. Like I said, it counts towards that housing choice designation. It also gives us some protections on our SHI should we somehow lose a bunch of units overnight, which wouldn't happen, but there are additional grace periods allowed for communities that have an active plan in place. It's also something that the state is encouraging each community to stay up to date on. So we actually carried over a good portion of the goals were built upon the first plan. So it's not something required, but best practice.
Okay. Now if I recall from my time on the planning board and also, some recent projects, we have a pretty effective means of dealing with staying above that 10% threshold because I think we require any new developments to have 15% affordable, correct?
Yes, with some exceptions in certain districts like University Avenue. So we generally are okay moving forward. That's what has allowed us to stay above the 10% for many years. The one thing that we're just trying to be prepared for, even though it seems far off, is the expiration of those homeownership units. Because there are there's at least 30 units that have that 50-year expiration still, and that they're starting to turn over, and so we're replacing them with those long-term deed writers when we have that opportunity. But inevitably, some people will outlast that 50-year expiration.
Yeah. Okay. Regarding a lot of the demographic information that you displayed, are our patterns materially different from others around the Commonwealth, especially what I would call sort of peer communities?
No, it's exactly what we're seeing in every community. We saw it most recently with the Everett Street Lottery, where for 24 affordable units, we had over 1,300 applicants. And when I reached out to the lottery agents that work in other communities, they said, we're seeing this everywhere. This is exactly what the state has been trying to address with some of their housing legislation. This is a lot of where it's rooted in. So this allows us to see, okay, Westwood hasn't been immune to this, unfortunately.
Right, right. And then the demographic data you showed that I think was only through 22. One nugget of sort of positivity that I took out of there with respect to demographics was the fastest growing group between 2020 and 2022 appeared to be in the 40 to 44 range. And I'm guessing that was likely due to folks moving out of Boston during COVID. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that was my speculation. We talked about this a little bit when we went through developing this particular section early on in the process, where because it's 2022 data, we don't know what the COVID impacts are. So it's likely that the Boston people exiting cities contributed to that increase, just like it might be contributing to that large jump in poverty. We don't know, and that's where future assessment will be able to evaluate that better.
Okay. And then I listened to some of the discussion that the planning board had at the end of your presentation before referring this to us. And there were questions around impact at both the school and the public safety level. And I'm just curious as to were there any considerations given to presenting this to either the long range financial planning committee or the FS1 steering committee? Because I think that wherever, and Phil, as you have a draft of this, I don't know if you identify a particular area for this overlay district, if it is an overlay, but obviously where something like that might be located could have material impact on some of the deliberations those two groups are having with respect to where you locate fire station or some of the other considerations with respect to, you noted it earlier, Amanda, the residential commercial pie shifting. So this would add significantly to the residential side. So I'm just curious as to, was there any presentation to those groups? And, because to me, that would be something I would find helpful before endorsing.
So we didn't discuss that, but we're happy to do that. This plan has evolved throughout the process with input from various boards. We have liaisons from the planning board and the select board, obviously, and then coincidentally, we have a ZBA member as well that serves on the board. But we're happy to collect further input. I think an important thing to remember with these plans is we're not locking the town into anything. All of these things have to be weighed individually. For example, the 40Y district, that wouldn't just be a, quick process of randomly identifying a piece of land and going for it. It would go through the same rigorous evaluation that we do with everything else on the planning side. So looking at traffic impacts, looking at public safety, and that's also where a lot of the goals around funding come in. Is we can utilize some of that. We don't know the full potential of what types of things it can cover. But the purpose of those grants are to help communities address these types of things because they recognize there's an impact.
Do you have a sense of the size and scope of those grants? I'm just curious because I think those are probably one-time monies based on a project or the number of units in a project or something like that. I'm just, I get each project will be approached with that type of scrutiny and that type of analysis. But, if we're thinking about, for example, an overlay district and where that might be located, just want to understand a little bit more of the thinking behind that.
Yeah, so it's a relatively new grant program, and a lot of the information is kind of like it's not readily accessible. But from what I understand is it doesn't have to be tied to a project. It can be applied for by the community to plan for future growth. So I'm definitely, as part of this, it's looking more into what that is. But my understanding is it's not necessarily tied to a project. So it'd be something that, say, the town knew there's maybe a potential for growth in a certain area, whether zoning changes were made or not. But we know there's no, let's just use sidewalks as an example. There's no sidewalks. You can apply preemptively for that to help address those infrastructure needs.
Bill, anything to add from your deliberations as a planning board?
I think I endorse it heartily. I mean, put in a lot of time with the housing partnership. And even with respect to just the need, which is partly why I did a little bit of a deep dive in the 40Y starter home concept, which in my initial cut is multi-generational, was looking at various, aspects, but it hasn't gone to the planning board. It would have to be vetted. There's a lot of things that would still have to come, but I think
I share my colleagues' enthusiasm for the idea of the 40Y district, right?
Yeah.
That could be something that could address a number of needs in town. These are some of the other considerations that I think we have to, as a board, give thought to before endorsing something. So I would ask that maybe we have some conversations with those other two bodies. I'd be open to, thoughts from my colleagues on that.
Mm-hmm.
Marion, you're on mute.
I'm so sorry. I think that makes a great deal of sense to do that.
Okay. Joe, thoughts?
Yeah, I don't want to delay our recommendation. What exactly are you thinking, Rob?
I think that, if there are, for example, areas that have either been thought about or are the potential subject of a draft article, as an example, that might be, something that would be helpful for like the FS1 steering committee to know. The idea that, a lot of this revolves around increasing density. We know that we don't have a whole lot. I think it was your graph showed 13% is what we have in the way of commercial business in town from an assessed value standpoint. As you increase density, you're increasing that residential share of the pie. And, we need to be able to help provide residents some relief on the commercial side to pay for the associated services that come with increased density. So those are just some of the things that I think would be really helpful for discussion with the Long Range Financial Planning Committee.
I don't know that necessarily it's a either or. I think they certainly all additional information, I agree with you, would certainly be helpful to us all. I think we are pretty close to a point where this has been worked upon for, Amanda, how long has it been? It's been in the 18 months. and there's been a lot of effort that has gone into it. I would hope that we wouldn't necessarily put a pause on this while we necessarily, seek some inputs that might certainly be useful, but I think I don't know that it's specifically necessary.
Well, I guess, did I miss a deadline or a time urgency that is pressing that to be approved at this meeting tonight? And because, some of what that we've heard throughout things with respect to FS1 and other things is what is the overall plan and how does all of this work? And so I'm very mindful of that as we sit here having this discussion of a very, very thoughtful, well-crafted plan. But I also want to understand what are some of the unintended consequences potentially of that, and make sure that we have ample opportunity to vet before just giving it our blessing.
Fair questions. I'll defer to the select board members.
So the groups, Rob, that you're interested in having them do a presentation to would be the long range financial planning group and the FS1 group.
I think so. Yeah, Joe. I think that those would be part of, the deliberations that they're having on a number of things. Obviously, the FS1 group is with respect to, where and what we do to help alleviate that situation. But the long range financial planning has a lot to do with both the, long range projects that are on the cost side of the ledger, as well as how do we address the composition of commercial residential to help grow commercial, to be able to help provide some relief for the residential taxpayer. So I think this is material to their conversations, and I think it would be helpful for them to have some view into this. I wouldn't want anybody making decisions absent this information and having them come back and say, well, we didn't know about this.
Okay, so I understand it better. So you'd like those two presentations. You'd like the committee to get some additional input and then come back to the select board. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so. Because I don't know, what the attendance was at the various public forums that you've held. We know sometimes public engagement can be low. So I want to make sure that we've had this vetted by a number of groups that are looking at it from different perspectives.
And if I could just add to that, Rob, I think the wealth of information that you folks, the Fair Housing Committee have, and the perspective that you have to bring that to long range, I think would be very educational to them to hear directly from you, because you've looked at this so carefully and so thoughtfully.
I don't think that we have this is not a hard deadline, so I don't think there's anything, and it probably greater public engagement, probably I'm going to join in, I guess, Rob, and say, having greater consideration. It also enhances the notification to residents as to this entire plan and what we're talking about. So I think it's actually probably a good idea, and I would endorse it. I think it's a good idea.
Okay. We, be happy to have you guys back, for a much shorter conversation with some of the feedback that you've received from some of those other groups. But I think that would be helpful to us as a board to be able to make, the type of endorsement that you're seeking from us tonight.
Okay.
But again, the fantastic work that was done by all. This is by in no means, trying to diminish anybody's work. This is, how do we make sure that we're getting people engaged and knowledgeable so that other decisions that we're making are well informed as well.
And those that might have some consideration also have the opportunity to hear it, vet it, ask the questions, and then we can go forward. I think it makes sense.
Thank you very much. Matt, do you need to adjourn your meeting?
Yes. So I just want to thank you all for allowing us to be here. And I just want to echo what everyone else has been saying. I think we talked about this very astutely. I think that, covering the unintended consequences and just doing our due diligence and talking with the long range financial planning and FS1, I think is, just a really great idea. And I appreciate all of your input on that. So now the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn the January 5th, 2026 meeting of the Housing Partnership and Fair Housing Committee. Is there a motion?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Yes. I have a motion and a second. I'll take roll call vote. Joan?
Aye.
I don't see Mike anymore, so I would go to Phil.
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Thank you all. We appreciate it, Select Board. Thank you so much.
Thank everyone.
Thank you all for what you
Thank you.
do. Thank you,
Have a
Amanda.
great night.
Have a good night.
Okay, next up, we have a budget update from Stephanie. So I know, Stephanie, you are going to share a few slides with us and give us a little bit of update.
Yeah. Let me just share my screen. All right, there we go. You can see that, I'm assuming.
We got it.
Yes.
Great. All right. So good evening, everyone. I'm here this is the time of year where most of your meetings you see from me an update on the operating or capital budget. So tonight we'll be focusing sort of on a high level preview of the overall operating budget and where we are. So the current status, operating budget forms have been submitted by departments. Thank you to all our department heads for that process. It's a month or so long process of them going through and really reviewing everything they might need from salaries to expenses and submitting that. So I first want to say thank you to all of them for working with me on that so far. The review for that started in early December. It includes, like I said, salary and expense budgets. On the capital side, the 5-year capital improvement plan was distributed and posted online. The proposed capital article plan was presented at your meeting in early December on the 8th. I've gone through an initial forecast of projected revenues. There's also been a projection of fixed costs. So I'm going to go through both of those tonight. And those are both based on current information. We're still pretty early in the process, but we have a pretty good idea so far of where we are. Budget steering has been meeting. That includes with the chair of the FinCom, school committee, school members, chair of the select board. So those meetings have been ongoing for a number of months now. For next steps, we just continue to review the capital budget plan for the articles that I had initially presented in December. The municipal and overall operating budgets, of which we'll produce books for those in about a month or so. Those are ongoing. We'll work collaboratively with department heads to present a well-rounded budget that preserves a high level of services as we do each year. I'll then continue to update you on proposed expenditures and revenues. And as we always say, the budget, once presented to you for the final in February, the municipal, that we must have an overall balanced budget going into the FinCom public hearings and going into town meeting. So the proposed municipal budget, review of services included in the proposed budget, I'll have that for you in more detail in your later January meeting, but I'll highlight it some points tonight, and then continue to update you on any changes to salary and expenses as we go along. So on the revenue side for our preliminary projections, I always say that this time of the year we're still evaluating. There's a number of sources that we still have to wait for more information on, but to date and what we have so far on the levy side, that is a number that I can be pretty confident in. We do our recap, what we call with the state in November. We get our new growth number and we can sort of start to build that levy capacity for what we're looking at for the FY27 budget. So, and I'll have a slide on this later to give more details, but just to highlight each year per Prop 2.5, which we talk about often, we can increase the levy year over year by 2.5%. For FY27, that increase is about 2.5 million. At this time in the year, we estimate new growth conservatively. We do that on purpose because, like I just said, we just got our certified new growth for 26 in November of this year. So just less than 2 months ago. So that lags behind. So we conservatively estimate that new growth at this point in the budget cycle. And right now that estimate is 550,000. We then have what we call available capacity from prior years if the full levy is used. So it's excess levy capacity for FY26. So that number for this year is 1.3 million. A big reason for that number being higher than previous years is that the FY26 final new growth number came in at 1.65 million, which is higher than it's been the previous 3 years or so. On the state aid side that should say FY27 initial projection, We are level funding right now at the final FY26 number, which is about just under 8.8 million. And the reason for that, we do that each year, is at this point, we don't know what the projections are for increase to state aid. The governor's budget typically comes out initially at the end of January, and we will update the board when the cherry sheet information is released. Local, and I know you just had voted that moving your meeting to the 26th, which Rob mentioned, is a good thing because that MMA meeting where that announcement comes up is January 23rd, I believe, whatever that Friday is. So that will be good timing with your next meeting. I'll be able to have that information for you. Local receipts, FY27 projected levels are funded level funding at 5.1 million. And just as a reminder, the estimate for that in the FY26 budget was increased by 400,000, which was the first increase that had been seen in 4 or 5 years. And then also again, the FY26 budget by $500,000. So that budget has been increased by almost $1 million over the last 2 years. Local receipt categories include, the major one is motor vehicle excise tax, then permits, fees, licensing, and investment income. Free cash was certified July 1st of this year at 15.7 million. I know I presented that to you over the summer in more detail. We are planning to continue with the current allocations per the financial policies, which includes increased amounts for base capital, school and municipal. So currently total those two articles would be about $3 million. We're utilizing $125,000 for the stabilization allocation at town meeting, $405,000 for FinCom reserve, and $355,000 for the select board reserve fund, which is in line with what we did in the FY26 budget. We'll then plan to utilize just over $2 million of free cash for additional capital beyond the base. That's one of the articles I had presented to you at your December meeting. For meals and hotel tax, the current balance of that account is 2.3 million. That's available for capital projects. And we plan to utilize about 1.2 million for an article at town meeting in May for some items beyond base capital. And so down the bottom, you'll see it says initial revenue increase from FY26 is approximately 5.6 million. And this is just an overview chart showing the breakdown of sort of what I just went through. If you're more of a numbers and chart person, this might be more user-friendly to look at. So it just shows our 8 main categories of revenue. So when we talk about a balanced budget, obviously it's very important to know on the revenue side what's funding it, so you can sort of fit in to balance within those revenue sources what you can afford on the operating side for expenses. So as you can see in this column, it's just the FY27 projections, taxes, state aid, sewer enterprise funds, the local receipts. Available funds is just additional things such as ambulance receipts and things like that. Those are for specific either items in Appendix D, our main operating budget, or on articles. Available funds, meals and hotel tax, and free cash. So that all rolls up to about 135 million for a projected revenue budget for FY27, which is a 4.4% increase over the previous year, which is on track with previous years. And just a reminder, like I said, the governor's budget will be announced at the January 23rd meeting. So right now we are funding state aid level funded. This is just a chart I show each year of how we get to that tax levy number. I'm not going to go into too much detail tonight, but I do, because I'll do this more at your January 26th meeting. But just showing that we are starting off building our levy capacity in FY27 based on the prior year's levy capacity, which includes that updated new growth number for FY26. So at this time, when I would have been presenting to you last year, that 1.65 million under new growth for FY26 would have been 550,000. Then we get the updated number that gets plugged in, and it all builds for the initial projection number for the levy for this upcoming budget year. We then add 2.5%.
Stephanie, I just wanted to highlight, you mentioned earlier that number was significantly higher, and this line shows that from prior years where it's been between $7.25 and $1 million, you know, at 165. So it's not like you're sandbagging that 550 number, right? We do that conservatively to ensure that in the event we don't realize that type of new growth, we're not bound to then have to cut service.
Which is what would need to happen. So if we went through the recap process in November and we didn't hit our target for new growth, we would need to reduce and cut the budget elsewhere in order to balance the budget. So that's exactly correct. So then that all builds up to what we call the initial levy limit. We then add in exempt debt, which is mostly debt for the Pine Hill School at this point. It is going down a little bit, so that's good news, about $100,000 drop there. And that rolls up to the total levy capacity. So that's the number I've been plugging in as the projection for what we would be using for tax revenue. Fixed costs. So this is one thing we have some up-to-date information on that I just wanted to quickly go through. The current estimate to the total fixed cost budget is about 4.1%, which might sound high, but it's actually really great compared to the previous 2 years. That's a total change of just under $1 million. A big reason for this, which is a good thing, is that the pension assessment, which we've seen in previous years be kind of all over the place, and last year in particular was very high due to some a new actuarial valuation and changes in assumptions. We're actually seeing a decrease this year over FY26, which is a great thing. We received the FY27 preliminary assessment from Norfolk County Retirement System. Part of this is because they reviewed these increases, and it was showing that even again in 27 and into 28, seeing large increases of about 10, 12, 15% for communities. So they really reevaluated and voted to push out the funded by date to FY34 from, I think it was FY32. So with those 2 years, it is giving some relief to communities in FY27, which is a good thing. It's a one-time decrease. I will say future years, we will see increases again. Hopefully it's within the 4 to 5 to 6% range, which is more sustainable and not back to an 8, 10%. But for this year, at least, there has been a reduction in that assessment. So that's been included in the overall percentage change. Health insurance, we are estimating an increase of 12% over the current year. This is based on GIC meetings and the materials that have come out with their range of what they're estimating for each plan for increases. This is happening all over communities in Massachusetts. I'm sure many of you are aware health insurance costs are sort of skyrocketing. So we unfortunately are being hit with that as well. We are projecting about a 12% increase at this time over FY26. Once we get more information from the GIC, their plan descriptions come out in February, and then the real numbers, the final rates come out in March, hopefully early March. We then sit down and do an analysis of the cost on all of the individual plans we have and how many people are signed up for them. And we get a much better projection of what the increase is going to be. But for right now, it's at 12%, which is about $1 million increase over the FY26 budget. And just to show you the history of the last couple of years, it has been getting higher year to year. FY22 is 5%, jumped up to 8.3 in 25, and it was 10% last year. And those are final numbers. So I will continue to update the board if I get any information on that. Trash, the current budget is just over $2 million for FY26. The estimated increase in FY27 is about $5.7 million, just over $100,000. I don't usually highlight this because it's a pretty steady year-over-year fixed cost item, but this year we are seeing an increase in the townwide hardware software line item. This increase is due to the new financial software system that we're going to be onboarding. So if you remember at the last town meeting, the town, which was great, approved as an article, a funding source, capital investment to switch our financial software system, which is very outdated, over to a new one. So we have started that process. We're in the process of signing a contract. Once we get going and start onboarding that new system and building it, we are on the hook for paying the new annual subscription for that program. And it is going to be more expensive than the one we currently have, which we knew going into this. So we'll see, along with the annual software cost increases in that line item, and this covers, anything from a software program that the police might be using to DPW, it's all departments. So we see the normal increases on that line item. This year, it's a little bit more significant. Other fixed cost increases, so there's no significant increases on any of the other items in that. We're level funding most of the budgets. And we actually we are planning to reduce the payroll tax. That's one of the items by about $250,000. And that's just because we looked at recent actuals, particularly on the school side. The actuals have been much lower than the budget the last 2 years, so we want to make sure to right size that. So we're reducing that item. And then the annual OPEB appropriation. And I highlight that because that does come from taxation. So that will be just over 1.6 million. And that's a $25,000 increase per the funding schedule. So like I said, 4.1% at this point. Just to compare, the final increase in FY26 was 7.9%. So the FY27 overall projection for available revenue, I do this breakdown. It's pretty rough, but I do want to give at this point sort of a picture of where we are. So that increase in tax revenue due to the 2.5%, largely due to new growth. What it will be for 27 is just over 4 million. On the expenditure side, what we know of already is about the $1 million in the fixed cost that's taken right off the top, the $25,000 increase in OPEB, and then our debt service budget. So we are increasing, that's year over year, the non-exempt debt budget, which is included, debt service budget, which is included in the overall operating budget, is pretty steady year over year, and it hasn't seen an increase in the last couple of years. We are seeing one this in FY27. We recently went out long-term in November for a number of items that have been approved at the last 3 town meetings. So we're borrowing for a number of projects. That payment will hit in FY27. So we're increasing that budget by $285,000. So that leaves about $3 million, what we call the net available for all other operating budgets outside of debt service and fixed costs, which is mainly municipal and schools. So just to give an idea of that remaining 3 million and what it looks like for when we are on the expense side, looking at individual budgets and what we need to fit within, each 1% increase for the school and municipal total is about $850,000. And just to drill down that a little bit more, because we do say that we strive for operating budgets that are sustainable year over year. We want to provide core services without having to have major fluctuations in those budgets, which could cause areas of concern. I've just broken down each increase of 1% on the school side and the municipal side, just to show you what those numbers would look like.
And that is those numbers there are effectively because the municipal side of the operating budget is roughly 24-25% of the overall total operating budget. And the schools are, somewhere in the 54, 55, 56% of the overall operating budget range, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you.
Yep. So the school department is scheduled to present their operating budget to the school committee in mid-January. So I don't have a number for you on that end of things, but I can speak for the municipal budget side. We're actively still working on that budget. The initial request came in, departments submit what they feel, and it's usually rightfully so, for expenses, what they need to operate, small increases here and there to keep up with inflation, what they have for salaries. So they submit all of that, and then we sort of work through it and see what we can fund, what might have to be pushed out a year. So the initial increase that came in from all departments was about a 5.2% increase over FY26. That just isn't sustainable this year. So we had to review a little bit. And after going through, it's now about an increase of 4% over FY26. So the current municipal budget stands at about 4%. Obviously, I'll have more of an update for you at your 26th meeting, and then a final number for that before we vote on the overall municipal budget that will be produced the first week in February. And we'll continue to work on those and present more details to you. And these just 2 charts, just a breakdown. I know I say this a lot. It's 82% of these budgets are salaries. It's people. There's not a lot on the expense side. Also, within that total pie on the municipal side, it's heavily DPW and public safety, so police, fire, and DPW. So for next steps, I'll continue to come in front of you over the next couple of months. You'll see a lot of me. Go over revenue sources, update as soon as we hear anything about the state aid, continue to go through the capital budget articles with you, continue to work through municipal budget requests, evaluate where we are. If there are any new positions or programs, either that get funded or don't get funded, I'll present all of that to you at your next meeting and exactly where we are with those requests. The documents, this is important. I know the meeting got moved tonight, so that should say maybe February 3rd more so. But those final produced documents have to go out, at least the proposed budget from the select board, especially on the municipal side, needs to be 3 months prior to town meeting. So that target date that we have is February 3rd for the municipal budget document, the overall budget summary, and all initial capital articles. I will be presenting the proposed FY27 budget to FinCom on February 10th. We'll continue having conversations with budget steering and meeting with them as we've been doing. And then one of the final things that comes up is that I will prepare Article 1 and 2 FY26 supplement budget articles for you, probably late February, early March, and go through anything that we need to either close out the year or supplement, or things that have come up throughout the year that we just can't fund through the select board reserve. And that's all I have. If I'll leave this up just for a minute in case you have any specific questions that I can bounce back to a slide on.
Joe, Marianne, when you're formulating any questions you may have for Stephanie, let me just touch a little bit on some of the things that Stephanie highlighted. And, you know, there are two major pressures on our operating budget that we have no control over. The first is healthcare. As you saw, a 12% increase. Okay, we got a 4.5%, 4.4% increase in revenue, a 12% increase in, Stephanie, correct me if I'm wrong, health insurance accounts for about 40% of our fixed costs, correct?
Yeah, that's probably accurate. Yep. It's even larger than the pension. Yep.
Right. And we're getting some relief because they moved out the date. But that's not something that we can bank on in the future. We dodged a bullet with that particular increase. So this is one that puts enormous pressure on the remaining, and what you saw is that 82% of the operating budget is people. The other piece that is, outside of anyone's control in the town, and this will be talked about at the school committee meeting, I'm sure, is special education. There is, a tremendous amount of spending growth in the special education arena that is essentially an underfunded mandate from the state. And so, I will leave that to Tim and Maya and Lemma to be able to describe in more detail at their school committee meetings. But, those two pieces are putting tremendous pressure on the operating budget. And I can tell you, I think this is a year that we're not just going to talk about tough decisions and pain, but we are going to feel pain in some level of service cuts. And as you saw, with 82% of services being delivered by people, that may mean people. So I put that out there for you guys to be prepared for when we meet on the 26th. Hopefully the state comes through with, a reasonable number in terms of increase on the state aid side that can help soften some of that blow. But, I want to be clear, the pressures are real and they are outside of our control. When we can only go up by 3.5%, 4%, and a big portion is going up by 12. That's just math that doesn't work very well. Questions from either of you?
Stephanie, I just want to thank you for the presentation. Very well done. obviously there are pieces that we'll get a lot more information about as things go on. So I don't have questions for you at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Marion.
I don't have any questions at this time. I'm happy, Stephanie, that the retirement board came around to what you were advocating for last year on that. Rob, you're lucky we did okay on that, but we took it on the chin with the healthcare, which we've been tipped off to was going to happen. I guess my question is, and I'll study what you mailed out this afternoon in a little more detail, but we never did update our financial policies, and I do want to take a closer look at some of our reserve accounts, free cash and some of the others.
Yep. No, what Joe's referring to is it was recommended when the financial policies were last voted that they be reviewed every 3 years. And I believe the last time was October of 22. So my plan was to do that this fall, just something we couldn't get around to yet, but it's still on my radar, Joe. Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, Steph.
Okay. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, everyone.
Next, we have an update from the FS1 committee. I believe, Molly, you and Ford are going to handle that.
I'm going to hand it right over to Ford.
Bless you.
Welcome, Ford.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Rob and Joe and Marianne. Nice to see you all. Let me be quick because you've had a long evening so far. We started our process on December 1. That was our first meeting. So we've had 1 month to get to where we are now, and we've had 5 posted meetings during that month. And I figured I and others have had another 15 different touches with various people in town related to FS1. The one thing that we had to start with, because we had a committee, some who had not been on committees before, and others who probably had not a great deal of knowledge about fire stations, we spent some time looking at FS1, not necessarily the condition of it, because that is known, but what are their programmatic needs and how's their ability to meet those needs? They do a fantastic job, incidentally, with what they have. But we also went over to Needham and we looked at their station, which was completed in 2020. And we went to FS2 to understand them. And I've spent a great deal of time looking at other stations, not necessarily in person, but online, looking at the design of other stations. It's very interesting. I like to say fire stations are fire stations. They all have the same needs and the same wants and the same programmatic needs. And I think that's important to understand. And we understand that the importance of any design of FS1 or our station is that it must, and I must say, it must meet the programmatic requirements of a fire station. That's our starting point. We understand that a fire station must be a safe place for our firefighters, and it must be appropriate, and it must have an appropriate space for decontamination for our firefighters, for their gear, their air they breathe. It must have appropriate space for their physical health and their mental health, such as sleeping, resting quarters, fully equipped bathrooms, facilities, socializing, and quiet space for dining. It must have, and when you look at the fire that took place in Needham, when the fire people come back after a fire like that, they need some downtime. They need some time to regroup for the issues that they went through. It must have a place for them to work out for weights and aerobics. They have to keep in shape for what their job is. Appropriate training space to include a room for classes, floor training, especially for EMT and ALS training, and multi-story for a tower stairwell navigation, handling hose lines, search and rescue, ladder work, rappelling. Training is absolutely key. As I look at a sports team or I look at a military operation, it's the training that went into it that means for them to do their job. They need proper indoor space for their apparatus in accordance with response criteria and daily maintenance of vehicles, storage rooms, and much, much more. So when we talk about the size and maybe we can reduce things, we must always think first thing we think about is the programmatic needs, and I think that's absolutely essential and this committee is looking at that. We've had, and this is on the communication level, we have heard that there's some misinformation about the process out there. That's always true in any process, time you have a study such as this. But to be clear, this committee has made, and I want to make this very apparent, no decision, absolutely no decision that we will bring back the previous design in the same place. We have not made that decision. With that in mind, starting this week, we will be submitting information to the town website and various other news outlets on communication to the public as to where we are today. On January 29th at 7 p.m., we're going to host an in-person Zoom meeting, and also remote participation at the library for a community center, community forum to discuss where we are. And we're going to try to do that on a monthly basis. This morning, we had our 5th meeting, and we reviewed the 8 options that were discussed at the Public Safety Community Forum on October 7th. In the end, we voted the following motion, which I think is important to understand. And that is to begin the process of exploring 3 viable options for FS1. The first option is town-owned land behind Starbucks. The second option is a redesign of the current on the current property, and the third, the Deerfield property. And we're requesting that we meet with Town Council, Pat Ahern, to have some discussions about the purchase or taking of property on town land, because we're going to need that to have a way to get in and out of the station if it is on that property. We also think it's important that we get out and talk to the various abutters as soon as possible, like in the next week or so there are no surprises, that they know that we are considering that piece of property. Finally, going forward, January and February, we're going to continue to work on these 3 considerations and also turn to look at the short and long-term temporary operational training and living opportunities for Station 1, be it at that same location if we pick another location for FS1 or a temporary location. You know, I always think about this a lot. Time is not on our side. Public construction costs are going up, both the materials and the labor and all that, and that's the continuing problem. When I look at the MSBA programs for schools, we can look at tremendous increases in school building. This is the exact same. So, you know, for me, I'm new to the community. I'm getting to know everybody, and I just want to do sort of a shout out to Molly Fitzpatrick, Chief Steve Lund, Assistant Chief Colin McCarthy, Nora Lockname, and Mike Perkins, who we've spent some time with last week. I feel just very fortunate to be able to work with these people. They're very professional and helpful. And the selectmen, you have a impressive team in Westwood. So that's my report, where we are, and I think we are making quick progress in a short period of time.
Thank you very much, Ford, for the update. Questions from either of my colleagues?
No questions, just thanks, Ford, for all that
You're
you're
welcome.
doing, and all of the members of the committee. Thank you very much.
It's a great committee, so.
Joe?
No, I think you've got a pretty good group of folks there. I think they're very dedicated. I know you've put the pedal to the metal. I'm impressed with 5 meetings in that short time frame. I've been watching your meetings. I attended one. I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you. So, Rob, you have?
No, I think, we look forward to your continued progress. I know each of us has been watching the meetings as they've been posted. I thought Colin did a tremendous job with his, description of all of the things that they do as part of keeping us all safe. So I think that, I look forward to your continued deliberation on the various options that you have narrowed it to, and hearing from you so that we can continue to move something forward. So I have
Great.
no further questions myself.
Mr. Spalding, I'll call you tomorrow to
Oh, bless you. I look forward to it. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thank
Good
you.
night, sir. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is we move to new business. We have some contract discussions here. Molly, I believe this is yours with respect to some of the settled contracts that we have.
So I am pleased to announce that the DPW union has voted to ratify their successor agreement for FY 27 to 29. This is number 4 of the 5 that expire at the end of this fiscal year. So highlights of this agreement include some benefit changes such as personal leave to get in line with other bargaining groups, change in the supervision organizational structure of some of the foremen, and an incentive to have some of our newer members obtain some specialty licenses that are of a great value to the town. Stephanie's reviewed the costs, and we are comfortable that they fit within our sustainable budget model. I am happy to answer any questions, and I'm hoping for your vote of approval here.
Questions from either of my colleagues?
Not from me. Thank you.
I don't have any questions either. Congratulations. You're plowing through these contracts. Strong work.
Moving through them.
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Joe had to say there, Molly. We know in the past we haven't always been able to get these things to resolution nearly as quickly, and it certainly helps from a budget planning certainty perspective. So much great appreciation for all the work that you've been putting into that.
Thank you.
I'd be happy to make a motion, Rob.
Please.
Okay. I'd like to make the motion, select board vote to sign the memorandum of agreement between the town of Westwood and the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, Local 1445, for fiscal years 27 to 29.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Joe?
Aye.
Mary Ann?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Thank you very much, Molly. Okay, next on the agenda is a discussion to vote and hold a special town meeting that came in as a result of a citizens petition article. Before I call on town council to sort of bring us, well, Pat, why don't you take us through this? I've got some comments that I'd like to make before we get to opening it up to the community. So I will leave it to you to begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On December 24th, the Board of Registrars certified a petition to call for a special town meeting with 344 signatures of qualified voters. A partial copy of the petition, cover letter, and list of articles is included in your packet. If you would like the full petition with list of registered voters who signed, that's available through the clerk's office. The language was submitted by the lead petitioner, Aaron Sibley of 182 Bay Colony Drive, and I believe she is on the Zoom meeting tonight. Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 39, Section 10 says that we are required to hold that special town meeting within 45 days of the certified signatures. That takes us to early February. So we have to pick a date to hold a special town meeting. And I would tell you that the staff looked at various dates and seemed to be focused on, well, let me step back for a second. You just can't hold a special town meeting. You have to have Finance and Warrant Commission public hearings. You have to give notice for those public hearings, and you have to give notice to the town what the results of those public hearings are. So it looks like the best date for the town in terms of a room and to get it done within the 45 days is February 2nd, Monday, February 2nd. And the tentative place, it's not finalized, but the tentative place to hold it would be in the Westwood High School Gymnasium, which can hold Well, I've seen 1,800 people in there. We have estimates that that's about its maximum. We're looking at a 6:30 p.m. starting date, and it's at your decision whether or not you want to do that. There is a regularly scheduled select board meeting for the 2nd, but you heard earlier tonight that we could move that to the 3rd. And I'm happy to discuss particulars of the warrant articles, should you so desire, if the three of you have any other questions.
Okay, thank you, Pat. I'm gonna start by echoing what some of what I believe it was Mr. Bailey said, and try to take some of the temperature down, because you heard very clearly the matter being framed by interested parties as either saving the meadow or saving Bean Farm. And we as a select board hear regularly from people with strongly held beliefs on either side of this particular issue. Now, to be really clear, all of the people, and I do mean all of the people that are involved in this, are good, kind, generous people who love Westwood. They want to remain here and see our community healed and thriving. The members of the Westwood Land Trust, the original donors of the land, the Bean family, and those of us who give countless hours of service to our community. Good people, all of us. So as a select board, we get requests of all kinds from residents and businesses for assistance or guidance of one kind or another. Sometimes those requests have someone with an opposing viewpoint. We try to help residents and businesses find solutions that work for everyone within the town's charter and bylaws. It comes with the job that we signed up for, and it often puts us in a position where nobody's completely happy because they didn't get exactly what they want. This actual court case has to do with settling a difference of interpretation. As you heard Mr. Bailey talk about, it's not that simple. So it has to do with settling an interpretation of the conservation restriction on the parcel located at 665 Clabbertree Street. The town believes agricultural use is permitted and granting of that use may not be unreasonably withheld. The Land Trust believes they are upholding their responsibilities within the guidelines of the CR by denying that request. When parties have differences of opinion with respect to interpretation of contract language, that's oftentimes when they need to seek a judge's ruling to settle the dispute. That's what's going on here, and it's why we are seeking a judgment on the pleading, which is essentially, as Pat would tell you, a form of summary judgment from the Norfolk Superior Court. We have stated on multiple occasions that litigation is not our preferred path, and we remain open and hopeful for a resolution outside the courtroom. We have similarly stated that we have taken this path to preserve the town's rights as we understand them per the CR. Obviously, there is language that leaves the door open for a difference in interpretation. As a town, we continue to work with other potential landowners and the Westwood Land Trust on other parcels that might be preserved. Given the current challenge, it would be helpful to have clarity of what language means and how donor intent should be more clearly spelled out in any future conservation restrictions to prevent any such misunderstandings in the future. That's in our collective best interest. I can report we have ongoing discussions with the Westwood Land Trust on paths to settlement. Those conversations have been candid and collaborative. I can't go into any further detail on those as they are subject to confidentiality agreements that allowed for such dialogue to take place. So I think we have to open a public hearing related to this, do we not, Pat?
I believe we do.
Okay.
I'd be happy to make that motion. Mr.
Thank you,
Chair.
Joe.
That the select board open the hearing for a special town meeting in February.
I second that.
Okay. Roll call, Joe?
Aye.
Marianne?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Okay, so Pat, thank you for the summary of what this public hearing is all about. I will turn to my colleagues with, do you have any questions for town council, for our town moderator, Mr. O'Sullivan, who is here, or for our town clerk, Ms. Powers, who is here?
Well, I think we haven't said what the special town meeting is about.
I'll be happy to go through
yeah. And while, if I may, Council, while we're all aware, and perhaps many of the folks who are watching right now are aware, there may be a number of people who have no idea what this is about. So I think that would be helpful for folks.
Okay. So we received a petition, and I'm going to read it basically into the record. We, the undersigned registered voters of the town of Westwood, pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 39, Section 10, hereby petition the Select Board to call a special town meeting for the purposes of considering the following warrant articles. Article 1, to see if the town will vote to recommend that the Select Board, Town Council, or any duly authorized town official or employee immediately withdraw, discontinue, and cease further pursuit of the town's current lands lawsuit against the Westwood Land Trust. Article 2, to see if the town will vote to prohibit the expenditure of any town funds from any source in furtherance of said litigation. Article 3, to see if the town will vote to require a full and public accounting of all town funds spent to date in the furtherance of said litigation. And Article 4, to see if the town would vote to recommend that no member of the Select Board, Town Council, or any other town official or employee initiate, pursue, fund, or engage in any further legal, administrative, or strategic action related to this matter, or take any other action relative thereto without first holding an open in-person public meeting where the town residents may speak and be heard. We hereby request that the petition articles be allowed, the petition sponsor be allowed to address special town meeting for the purpose of presenting the above stated articles, that other town residents be allowed to speak at special town meeting for the purpose of discussing the above stated articles, that you have this petition and the above stated articles immediately be reviewed by town council, that you instruct town council to notify the petition sponsor if there are any problems or deficiencies with this petition or said articles, that you further instruct the town council to assist the petition sponsor in correcting such problems or deficiencies in time to have each of the above stated articles included in said warrant.
Thank you, Pat. So to be clear on this, and I do have a question. The special town meeting sought would not have any binding effect.
So when I was made aware that this was coming, I did have a discussion with Miss Sibley. We had a very nice discussion. But I also sought the opinion of Lauren Goldberg, who is perhaps the foremost expert on town meeting and town charters in the state. And she's provided us with an opinion letter dated December 18th. And it's her opinion, and I concur with it, that none of the four warrant articles have any binding effect on the Select Board. And I'll be happy to go through the reasons therefore with you if you'd like. The first one is the language says recommend, so that in itself has no binding effect on you. It's taking the temperature of the town, if you will. Ms. Goldberg agrees with that, and she writes a very lengthy scope of the legislative authority of town meeting. Town meeting is the legislative body in town. The Select Board is the executive function. The legislative body cannot tell the executive function how to operate. And all four of those articles are essentially trying to do that. And I believe the letter's in your packet, and we'll put it up on the town website as soon as perhaps tomorrow, if possible. So case law establishes a clear distinction between legislative authority and executive authority. There are a bunch of cases. A direction to an officer to sign a specified contract with named person to do a fine thing for a specified price is not a legislative act. So town meeting telling you how to operate your executive function is not recognized. And again, the second article is to stop you from spending money that's already appropriated. Town meeting can't do that. That's also runs afoul of the separation of legislative purpose and legislative function, function. To see if the town will require a full public accounting of all towns' funds spent to date in furtherance of said litigation. You don't need a warrant article for that. That can be done with a FOIA request. And I took a quick look at it today, and I can report that we've spent $12,000 to date on this litigation. To see if the town will vote to recommend that no member of the select board, town council, or any other town official pursue, fund, or engage in any further legal action. Again, they're trying to tell you what to do in your executive function through the legislative function. And if you think about it logically, if every time 200 members of the community were aggrieved by a decision of the select board, they could run in and schedule a special town meeting, we would never get anything done at this point in time. So the other specific requests, the town, she wants the ability to speak first. That's generally how the moderator's done it in these situations. But it's at the moderator's discretion, to recognize who speaks at town meeting. And that's the same for her request number 2, that you have the petition article immediately reviewed by town council. I reviewed it as a pre-petition article, but you have the sole authority over the use of town council, and Ms. Goldberg, in my opinion, as well. I did explain to Ms. Goldberg in conversations, and I forwarded a copy of Ms. Goldberg's opinion letter to her that it was not binding, that you further instruct council to assist the petition sponsor in correcting such problems. Again, I forwarded those letters to her, and now that we've received the actual petition, there's nothing I can do to change it at this point in time, because all members who sign it, it's their petition collectively. So that's where we are with those. So it's my opinion, and it's the opinion of outside counsel, that none of these articles are binding on you as a select board.
Thank you. If I could just continue with my comments on this. First of all, Rob, thank you for that update. I absolutely agree with what you said in terms of trying to hopefully have a civil discussion among all of us on this. We must follow the law in terms of the petition received, in terms of this special town meeting. However, as town council just described, and I accept that it will be non-binding on the town, which to my memory might be the first time we've ever had an article going to town meeting. I certainly can't remember one through all my years on FinCom. And this will have to go through FinCom. Our volunteers on FinCom will have to vet and deliberate on this, which is again non-binding and comes at a cost to the town. And I know that Madam Clerk, Dottie Powers, is with us, so I do want to ask you, Madam Clerk, about the cost for the special town meeting. But before I do, I did just want to address a question that came up at the very beginning of this meeting, some 2.5 hours ago, which is what is the cost of pursuing the DEC action, the declaratory judgment action, which is pending in Norfolk Superior Court. Somebody asked that question, and I asked that question for an update before this meeting, and the amount spent to date on that is $12,000, which comes out of the legal budget of the town. And with that, I would like to ask Madam Clerk if you could please just give us a summary of the cost to go forward with what here would be a special town meeting that is non-binding on the town. But what is the cost of the special town meeting, please?
Yes. So what we have to anticipate a large crowd, town meeting, we don't know when there's any controversial issues. We always want to plan ahead and make sure that we have the room. If we were to do it in the auditorium, of course, it would be a lot less expensive, but that only holds 644 people. The gymnasium is our best bet. That holds 1868. We have to rent chairs. We have to have an audio-visual company come out, which is significant cost. Staff alone. So if I break it down, audio-visual is going to be a minimum of $8,000. The chair rental is approximately $2,400. The staff is checking people in, setting up. It's IT, any technical issues that we need on the town side. That's another almost $2,500. There will need a police detail, which is approximately $1,200. We also have the electronic voting company that we use. If they came out, that would be another $4,500. There's 2 mailers. Each mailer is going to cost, between printing and postage, $4,500. That's times 2. Then we need to factor in custodian overtime for the space. So approximately I come up with $27,535.
And just so we're clear, Dottie, when we talk about mailers, we're talking about the FinCom mailers, which we are required to be sent per the charter.
That was a very quick turnaround. We had to get that to a company. Again, our window is very small here, 45 days, and the FinCom for the public hearing, so that people know to come on January 13th, that has to be in households a week before. So the crunch is really on here. And then again, there's a second mailing, has to again go to the printer, postage, second mailing has to hit households a week before the town meeting, which will be the special town meeting. I believe we're looking at February 2nd.
Thank you. I just have one last comment, if I may, Mr. Chair, which is to say, I'm very pleased that there is discussion on this, and very hopeful that this matter will be resolved and settled in the very near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. Joe, any comments?
Just one question. Dottie, did you say January 13th is a possible date for the FinCom hearing?
Yes.
Okay. And Rob, I'm assuming, I know it was a chair, you cover these bases pretty quickly. You've discussed this with the FinCom chair?
The FinCom chair and vice chair were part of a scheduling meeting once all of the certification came back from Dottie's office, because given the short time frame and the very busy time of year, especially as it pertains to the mailings themselves, I believe the first mailing needs to go out shortly thereafter or actually no, in advance of the FinCom meeting, and then there's another one that goes out after, saying what they recommend. Is that right, Dottie?
Yes.
So
that had to be ready and prepared to hit mailboxes today or tomorrow, actually, once we have the dates settled.
I'm sorry, I think I misspoke, Rob. Dottie, it's February 13th, correct?
No.
No, January.
January 13th is the FinCom hearing on this.
Okay, okay,
And then February 2nd is the actual
that's
special.
right. Okay, I got it. Wow, that is tight. Okay.
Dottie, one question for you. In the history of the town as you know it, has a special town meeting ever been called by a petition article or a petition being submitted, citizen petition?
Not from the history that I can gather. I went back to 1958. And up to that point, there's never been anything. And I don't think there's anything been prior, but that's kind of where I stopped.
Okay. Great. I will now, Mr. Moderator, do you have anything that you would like to weigh in on before I recognize the hand that I see raised?
I would just say that I'm hopeful after talking to the town clerk that the issues we had with the voting devices at the last town meeting, we will not be presented with those. The other issue that we had at the last town meeting was a mailing issue, and it was the postal service and not the town. In my neighborhood, the booklets arrived late. So I just encourage people who are listening, if you don't get the report from FinCom prior to the special town meeting, that you look for it on the town website. As long as the town gets it out on time, the town is satisfied its obligations. I hope we all get our packets delivered, but if you don't get it, look for the book on the town website.
Mr. Moderator, can you further explain why it's important? Because the FinCom makes a recommendation to town meeting on the warrant articles on what the town meeting should do. That's the motion before the town meeting.
Right. We'll have 4 articles to be voted on, and each one of them will be reviewed by FinCom. And they could either recommend a special town meeting adopt the resolution, or they could recommend indefinite postponement. So that will be the issue that comes before town meeting on each of the articles. And that's how the initial vote will go.
Okay. Questions from either of my colleagues for Mr. O'Sullivan?
No.
Okay.
No.
Tish, I will ask if you could scroll through some of the things that are in the Q&A to see if there's anything pertaining to this particular discussion item. And I will ask that you acknowledge Ms. Sibley and allow her to speak.
Hello, this is Erin Sibley. I live at 182 Bay Colony Drive, and I am the lead sponsor of the petition.
Welcome.
Thank you. And I appreciate being called on and having the opportunity to speak tonight. I want you to all understand, anyone who's listening, and I will point out that none of us know how many people are on this call because you're not sharing that information, that our petition for a special town meeting would not be necessary if residents of Westwood felt that their concerns were being heard by our representatives. Chairman Gotti, Ms. Cummings, and Mr. Privatera were elected to represent us and to serve all of our best interests. People feel that their questions are not being answered and their concerns are not being heard. Quite specifically, there were no public meetings prior to the filing of the lawsuit, and all of this could have been avoided if public meetings like this took place where you actually answered questions and didn't just listen to them. Quite specifically, the opposition to this lawsuit rises from the board's lack of public transparency and a failure to articulate a valid public interest, which you are by pursuing the lawsuit against the land trust and rejecting the donor's offer to repurchase of a town meeting.
Ms. Sibley, I want to interrupt you 1 second, just to let you know that you are having some audio issues that are sort of dropping out.
Can you hear me?
Yes, some of what you are saying though is dropping out. I don't know.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, Aaron, why don't you back up 2 sentences? I think that's where you cut out.
Okay, so we would have the level of detail that I just received from Dottie Powers is admirable. I would love to receive that level of detail to any of the many questions that Westward residents have been asking about this lawsuit. The cost of a town meeting is nothing compared to the cost of chasing this lawsuit through to completion. This is just the beginning, and all of the discovery is when the legal meters will start running. So it's disingenuous to compare legal costs so far to the cost of a meeting. But I believe if you would answer people's questions when they are in meetings like this, we would not have had to sign the petition. And there's a lot of anger on the same way left over from the fire station. So our specific objection is the lack of transparency and the fact that most of us didn't even know this was happening before you decided to file on our behalf a lawsuit against an all-volunteer charitable organization. So, and because of this lack of transparency and your continuing refusal to put forth a valid public interest justification for it, we felt that we had no choice. It's unclear why you continue to pursue this litigation when you have unresolved issues with respect to Fire Station 1, and we now know that Thurston Middle School is in the pipeline. This community has limited financial resources, and the fact that you are spending them pursuing this lawsuit seriously calls into question your good judgment and your ability to lead us. So I agree that the town meeting is not binding. I caution the select board that if we have a town meeting and the voters speak clearly, I caution the select board against ignoring the voices of the voters. And we are extremely frustrated, and that's why we are pursuing this course of action.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sibley, for your point of view. As we stated earlier, we have given reasons why we are pursuing this as a way to seek clarity and the interpretation of the CR, which there is a clear disagreement on. That is something that we said as early as, I want to say, September 29th. We gave a statement back then. We have put on every meeting agenda where we had executive session regarding this issue, the fact that it was related to potential litigation at 665 Clabbertree Street. So, Town Council, I believe we have adhered to our responsibility with regard to that.
That would be my position, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Okay. Next, I will recognize Ishani Tiwari.
Thank you. This is Ishani Tiwari. I live at 45 Far Reach Road. I'm an economist by training, and I'm a professor of economics. And the first principles we teach our students are examining the costs and benefits of any policy or proposal. I've used that same lens to evaluate several big previous proposals that have come in front of the town: University Ave, Islington, MBTA zoning, Pine Hill School, and even the FS1 fire station. In all of those, there were clear benefits and costs proposed, and I actually supported the select board's view on all of those. But the big gap in this current discussion is, what are the benefits? Specifically, what are the economic benefits of allowing agricultural activity on that plot of land? To me, it seems like the economic benefits are accruing to just one party, the Bean family. And I think that is and the cost of this is this lawsuit paid for by taxpayer money, extreme divisiveness in the town, and we have no answers. So I feel like to get answers to this question of what are the economic benefits, I think the special town meeting has become the last resort, and that's why I'm a firm supporter of it.
Thank you very much. Discussion will be had on the second. Next up, Mr. Kevin Becker.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for taking my question and comment. So just one correction. We did in fact have a special town meeting in Westwood. It was in 1997. It was to consider an addition to the middle school. It was held at the Westwood High School old gymnasium. Approximately 1,400 to 1,500 people attended. And so that was a petition. That was a citizen petition that I was co-author of, along with Lori Cohen, another resident of Westwood. My address, by the way, is 1227 High Street. I guess one of my questions about this issue is, since this CR has been in existence for about 20 or 25 years, I'd like to know what this group of select board members, Mary Ann, Joe, and Rob, what you see differently than previous select board members that prompted you to interpret it as open to using that land for agriculture. What did you see differently? That CR hasn't changed, and the three of you are the only thing that has changed. So what do you see differently in that?
The CR hasn't changed. You're right. The language has been in there allowing agricultural use throughout. And we believe that the town has the right to be able to pursue that. And so we have done so. We tried to facilitate some discussion and get to a place of agreement because we thought there was common ground for that to happen. It did not happen. There were some things that were said as part of the back and forth where information was no longer being shared, and we didn't think we had any other path forward than to seek a judge's opinion on the issue.
So you interpreted it differently than previous select boards and felt that you needed to litigate that in order to settle your questions.
I don't think that's the case, Mr. Becker. We had a vote of the Conservation Commission, voted unanimously 5-0 in January of 2024 to allow the agricultural exemption to be utilized. That was the thing that started this process forward. That had never been done before.
Right. I believe the Conservation Commission is also a volunteer organization, just as WEAC, and WEAC has opposed your action of this lawsuit to its greatest degree in a unanimous decision. So the Conservation Commission also has no oversight over the land trust or over the property that the town owns. And in this matter, at least with regards to the conservation restriction, it does not. So I don't know how that would have started the process unless you wanted to kind of use it as permission to go ahead with the.
I think you're mistaken. That land is owned by the select board, but it's under the care, custody, and control of the Conservation Commission.
Well, I think that's probably one of the things that's being debated, but thank you for taking my question.
Thank you. See two more hands, and then we'll move on to our next agenda item. I see a Mr.
Mr. Chairman, we've got some work to do before we can move on to the next one.
I realize that. I'm going to end the public comment period after this next two questions. So I see Mr. Peter Schuler.
Good evening. My name is Peter Schuler. I'm at 779 Gay Street. And as you know, I've spoken to this board several times about my concerns about the lawsuit. And I hear again tonight, you're framing this as an issue where you're trying to get some kind of clarification on your legal rights to allow a farming use on that land. And I continue to ask you, from a conservation standpoint, what is it about allowing a single business to do farming on that property? How is that better for the conservation of that land than letting it be as it is? That's what I don't understand. You have to understand this is a conservation issue for me. And you keep refusing to answer why it's better to allow a farming on that land rather than leaving it as it is. And you cannot deny the fact that it looks like you're helping one single business. All your legal documentation includes one single plan by the Bean Farm to use that property for their particular benefit. And you have not clarified to the town residents why you think it's better to help that one resident than to leave the land as it is under the terms of the agreement. The second thing I must say is, and this wouldn't have come up until I heard that you're telling us residents that you spent $12,000 on this lawsuit at a billing rate of $500 an hour. That comes to 24 hours of billable time spent on this. And you're telling us that all the documentation that's been filed, the court appearances, all the time and effort that's gone into everything related to this lawsuit has only been billed out at, let's say, 24 hours? I find that hard to believe.
Mr. Schuler, with all due respect, we are not paying $500 an hour.
Okay, you're paying much less?
$250.
Okay, so 48 hours in billable hours is all you spent on this lawsuit. You're telling us that?
Yes.
Okay. I don't see how that amount of work could be done. But anyways, if you could just simply answer the question, why is it better for the conservation of that property to allow a farming operation than to leave it alone? I'd love to hear it, and everybody listening tonight would love to hear that. Please answer that question for us.
Well, this is a conversation regarding the special town meeting. We're going to have to answer that question there as well. So the reality is we have a use that is allowed. We are seeking clarification to ensure that that use can be pursued. As we have stated many times, any RFP that goes out is not guaranteed to any one particular applicant. So, and there are many, many places throughout the Commonwealth where conservation and farming go hand in hand. And so we believe that it's in the best interest of the community to be able to allow farming and so that there is the preservation of open space. Some of the conversation has been around what would be a better adjacency to that, a parking lot or, a farm. And so there's a long history of farming in this community. So we are looking at that as something that is not at cross purposes. Now, there is a study that the Land Trust had done that at one point they had said they would share. They have never shared that with us to help us have a much deeper understanding of what the preservation value is of a meadow versus a farm. So again, we have asked for many of these things and not received them. So this is why we are pursuing the path that we are pursuing, and why, as I stated earlier, why a summary judgment is what we are seeking as the shortest path to resolution on this.
Right. Well, I thank you for that answer. I will say two things. To tell us that, and we've heard again, there's going to be an RFP. We understand that. Anyone can bid on it. We understand that. But you have hitched your horse to Mr. Bean. You already have hitched it in the filings that you've made to the court. That's what I don't understand. Now to come back and say, oh, no, anybody can be involved. You have included his plan as part of your lawsuit. The second thing.
Mr. Schuler, I'm going to hold you to our 3 minutes at this point. We have, the same rules in place for the commentary during a public hearing as we do in public meeting. So thank you. I'm not going to get into a back and forth debate on the issue here tonight. We will have the meeting on February 2nd.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. The last comment will be, Kathy, if you would like to speak, you need to put your name, full name and address into the chat before I recognize you. Otherwise, I will go on to the final hand that I see. Tish, do we see anything? No?
No.
I'll recognize Ms. Galkowski, so long as what you have to say is in addition to something that you've already said before and different.
Yes, thank you. Claire Galkowski, 320 Dover Road. I think that the question has still not been answered as to why this is in the interest of the town, and I don't really accept that you're going to hold off on answering that until the town meeting. You know, if this thing gets squared away or the public is heard before that, I don't know that the town meeting would be canceled, but the town meeting never would have had to be called if the select board had answered these questions way back, you know, in the earlier days. And we've been asking them repeatedly and we still have not heard them. I don't understand why this is considered in the best interest of the town. This has not been answered. Just because it was a farm 100 years ago doesn't mean that it should be perpetually used as a farm. Farming is a destructive practice compared with leaving a meadow alone. And this is what the Westwood Land Trust has determined, and it is it's their responsibility to uphold the conservation restriction as they see fit.
And we have answered this question multiple times. We view it as we are protecting and preserving the town's rights as specified within a legal document. And that is why reasonable people can have different interpretations. We have differences of interpretations, which is why we are seeking the essential summary judgment of a judge in Norfolk Superior Court. That is in the town's best interest to ensure that contracts with the community actually mean something.
Well, I disagree, and I am still not satisfied that we've gotten a good answer about why this is in the town's best interest, and the town is us residents too. It's not just the town government. So I'm not satisfied with that answer. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to close the public comment with respect to this and get on to the actual business of what needs to happen. So we need to open, I believe, the warrant on this particular town meeting and then close the warrant. Is that not right, Mr. Town Council?
Believe it is, yes.
Okay.
Donnie, do you agree or disagree?
Yes. Have you taken a vote to determine the date?
Right.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rob, I'm prepared to make the motion to hold a special town meeting on February 2nd, 6:30 p.m. in the Westwood High School gym.
I second that.
Roll call, Joe.
Aye.
Marianne.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well.
Rob, I'm also prepared to open the special town meeting warrant, if you'd like me to make that motion now.
Please, Joe.
Select Board to open the warrant for the special town meeting to be held, excuse me, on February 2nd, 2026, 6:30 p.m. at the Westwood High School Gymnasium.
I second that.
Roll call, Joe.
Aye.
Marianne.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Joe, can I get a motion to close?
Yes. Just let me scroll ahead, Rob. You know, my age takes a little time. Rob, I'm prepared to make a motion. The Select Board vote to close the warrant, which includes 4 articles for the 2026 special town meeting to be held February 2nd.
2026. Yes.
Okay, 2026.
I second that.
Okay, roll call, Joe.
Aye.
Picture is up there.
Marianne.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. And then I believe we have to vote to sign and post the warrant for the special town meeting.
I'm prepared to make that motion.
Yes.
Please.
I'd like to make a motion, Select Board vote to sign and post the warrant for February 2nd, 2026 special town meeting warrant, and for the warrant to be posted by the constables throughout the town and also on the town's website.
I second that.
Roll call, Joe.
Aye.
Mary Ann.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Okay, now I believe we need to do a discussion of, well, actually, I think we need to close this public hearing. So Joe, can I get
Could
you?
Dottie?
Could I just mention a few things, Chairman?
Please. Thank you, Dottie.
I just want people to know that there's a voter registration deadline in order to vote at town meeting and attend. Well, you can attend as a visitor, but you should have to be a registered voter. The deadline for that will be Friday, January 23rd. And the town clerk's office will be open that day from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. And you'll also be able to register to vote online up until 11:59 p.m.
We're registered, yeah.
Tish, would you mute Claire, please? Okay. Thank you, Dottie.
You're welcome.
Okay, next up, we have initial warrant discussion for the 2026 annual town meeting. Molly, I believe you.
Yeah, one town meeting to the other.
Yes.
So this is super high level. First look at the 2026 annual town meeting warrants. There are a number of articles. I'm going to go through them very quickly. So there's 14 budget articles. All of those pretty standard, are capital budgets, or operating budget, stabilization, and the like. There are 3 proposed select board articles at the moment. One regarding the transfer of the Deerfield from the care, custody, and control of the schools to the select board. One around the Obed Baker House property. There's a parcel of wetlands to be donated back to the town. And then a housekeeping item clarifying an item in our bylaws that we hold all of our elections at the high school now. There are 10 planning board articles and 1 citizen petition. We also have about 12 miscellaneous articles that we're holding in reserve. These are placeholders. These articles will be developed over the next month and a half. Some will be moved forward and presented at a future meeting, and what others will be removed as they just weren't ready to move forward. And I'm happy to answer any preliminary questions about that.
My colleagues first.
No questions here. Thank you. Molly.
I don't, it's too early, Rob, for me. I'm good, thanks.
Too early, too late? What?
It's definitely too late.
Okay. Then I believe we have to close the warrant for the annual town meeting. So I would entertain a motion on that.
I'd be happy to make a motion that we close the warrant for the annual town meeting.
I second that.
Excellent. Okay. Roll call, Joe.
Aye.
Mary Ann.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Okay. I think I'm going to, at Chair's discretion, waive any liaison reports unless either of you have anything pressing that you think this board needs to hear about and discuss tonight.
I do not.
You already saw my liaison report earlier. Outstanding report, by the way.
That's right. Thank you. We will dispense with that as an agenda item then. And then I believe we have some regular meeting minutes to approve from December 8th. Did you both have an opportunity to review those and get Dottie any comments?
No comments from me.
I don't have any
Okay.
comments.
You look like you have a question though.
Trying to remember if No, I'm good. Thanks, Rob. I'm good.
Okay. I would entertain a motion with respect to the December 8th minutes.
I make the motion that the select board approve the regular meeting minutes of December 8th, 2025.
I second that.
All right, roll call. Joe?
Aye.
Mary Ann?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Our next meeting, as you heard earlier, will be Monday, January 26th, 2026 at 6 p.m. right here via Zoom. The board will be going into executive session. And as we always do, we will read the executive session reasons here. The select board will be going into executive session to discuss two issues. First, pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to a litigation involving the property at 665 Clabber Street. And the second, pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 22FG, to comply with any general law for review of executive session minutes, both of which would have a detrimental effect on the position of the governing body if the discussion were held in open session.
So moved.
Seconded.
All right, and we will not be returning to open session. So roll call vote on adjournment to go into executive session. Joe?
Aye.
Mary Ann?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Thank you very much. Have a good evening, everybody, and we will see you on the 26th.